This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Come on. We call it the place to be. The place to be, yes, it's the place to be. Then I shall be.
Place to Be Nation, Scott Criscola and Justin Rosero. This is the Place to Be Podcast.
It is contagious. It is the place to be, and we are live each and every Monday.
To do worse than Josh Richard.
Place to Be Nation, welcome to another great episode of the one and only Place to Be Podcast. I am your co-host, Justin Rosero, coming to you live here on this Tuesday evening, reveling in the aftermath of another Christmas in the books. And, of course, along with me, as always, is the jolly old elf himself, that is Scott Criscola. Scott, how are you?
Good evening, JR. Good evening, Place to Be Nation. Post-Christmas. Welcome to episode 475 of Just Like Christmas, the longest-running episodic holiday gold standard. JR, Merry Christmas. And you had a very...
We're bringing Merry Christmas back. No one's ever said it until now. We're saying it.
That's right.
Bringing it back.
That's right. Although Kwanzaa started today. But anyway, I hope everyone had a nice Christmas weekend. I know I did. Enjoyed time with the family. JR, you had an entertaining one.
Yeah.
To say the least.
I can tell that tale. Let's bring in our third man first, so he's not sitting in the dark, and then we hear him giggle as I tell this story of misery. Kelly Nelson, how are you?
I am doing great, guys. Merry Christmas.
Welcome back, Kel. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, great to be back.
It's been a while since we've had you, but if those have listened to the Christmas Spectacular that dropped last weekend, or this past weekend, Friday night, you would know Kelly was with us for that, playing a scientist in the Old West. So did you enjoy that turn right there?
I did. I mean, I didn't know that was my, destiny to play a scientist in a play, but hey, I think I did all right.
You're typecast as a nerd. What can I tell you?
That's fair. That's totally fair.
And Pete is apparently typecast as a cowboy, the greatest cowboy to ever live. So
it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. He missed his calling in life. He should be in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, it's probably the looks holding him back. I'll be seeing Pete in just a few months in New Orleans. I'm very excited about that. Get one of those big old Pete Schermarker bear hugs. Can't wait. Decided, though, that we're going to be driving down to this WrestleMania. We're not flying. So I'm driving from Rhode Island to New Orleans.
Wow.
21 hours.
National Lampoon's WrestleMania vacation.
Me, the cowboy, and we're able to... Mr. D'Amato's joining us now that there's no plane involved. He's driving with us. He'll be in the back seat
Okay.
of this rig. So it should be an interesting time. Three of us jamokes making our way through the country. But I've never...
He's rusty in the Navy.
I've only done, like, road trips twice with my parents when I was a kid. We went to Florida twice. So I've never done, like, a guy's road trip thing. So I'm looking forward to it, actually. I've never actually done something like this. So
It should be fun.
I'm already dreading the ride back. But I think the ride down there will be a good time.
Ride back.
You're not driving. You're staying somewhere, I assume.
No, we're going right through. That's our plan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
We'll be good.
Maybe we should do a podcast to keep you all awake.
Well, we are. We're going to do some pod blasts, kind of like road diary kind of thing. So we're going to get that.
That's because we're going to have some road.
Yeah. Well, D'Amato's in the mix, so you never know.
Get through maybe two between the sheets.
Right, yeah, that's it. It was fire up last week, so then it'll be it. Take us right through.
Yeah, have Bix. I'll take you all the way to Canada.
Yeah.
Take you to
But no, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Roger's done a lot of these things. I guess he's driven a lot. He's kind of a maniac, so I think he'll probably drive us. We're going to leave like in the evening, I think, is the plan, and get there by. We're going to leave like Thursday evening ish, and try and get there by Friday evening. So, my thought is if he takes us through the night, and then I'll probably drive part of the day, and we'll leave D'Amato in the back seat, doing whatever he's going to do.
That's funny.
So anyway, if you're going to be in New Orleans, let us know. Of course, we'll be doing our usual Sunday pregame gathering. We'll get time to talk about that. What's actually coming up a lot sooner is the Royal Rumble, Scott. You'll be with me for that. That's coming up at the end of this month. Well, whatever, end of January. But we will be also doing a gathering in Philly on the Saturday, I believe, is the plan. Oh, no. Yeah, Saturday's the plan right now. So probably like pre-NXT-ish, like mid-afternoon at a bar. So if you're going to be in Philly and you're not already on my radar, let us know.
We'll let you know where we'll be.
Yeah.
So
should be fun.
The place we went to 3 years ago was pretty good. We may have to pick somewhere, depending. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of it. But we'll have to pick a place close to Wells Fargo if a lot of people are going to take over. We may have to think about that too. But anyway, we got time to talk about it. As we get closer, we'll let everyone know.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I looked at the calendar. I'm like, fuck, this thing's like a month away.
Yeah.
That drives me to feel like nothing.
No, yeah, I know, right? At least let's just knock on wood that we don't have the same weather that we had 3 years ago. So it's a fucking disaster. Oh, God.
Yeah, so yesterday was interesting. We woke up, of course, did gifts. I assembled this maniacal train pattern set on the train table. We got my son.
I saw this picture. I'm like, Jesus, it looked like Disneyland.
It was intense. It took me a while. And of course, he knocked it down like 40 minutes later. But so we did that. Then we finally got them ready, and we were getting ready to go to my aunt's. It was like, 12:45, and we're taking kind of like family pictures in front of the Christmas tree. And there's one picture, and I posted it in our live chat group, where, like, I didn't notice it at the time, but looking back was hysterical, where you could see my son just about to, like, throw up. I mean, his face is like he didn't like, kill me. He's like, put a bullet in my head in this picture. And then 2 minutes later, just threw up all over the floor. So we weren't sure if it was, like, something he ate or if he was getting sick. And so we gave it a go, went to my aunt's. We were there about 40 minutes. He's sitting on my lap at the table, and I could just tell like he was going to burst again. So I ran into the bathroom, and he threw up on the floor. So we booked it out of there. We left my daughter with my parents. So we spent Christmas. It's probably the most low-key Christmas I've ever had. I mean, it was just literally me, my wife, and my son for most of the day, just at home, just like watching TV and giving him a bath. Like that was pretty much it. And then I was kind of queasy, so I didn't know if I was getting what he had or if I was just sick from watching him puke all day. So my parents had brought us leftovers that I couldn't even like look at. So I ate that all today. So I kind of had my Christmas dinner today. So yeah, it was an interesting day for sure.
Yeah, and you and I had almost polar opposite weather situations. You pretty white up in Rhode Island, even in northern Mass or southern Mass. A lot of our guys like Matt Souza and those guys that live in Mass and Cowboy. Down here, we got wind and that was it.
Yeah, it was a weird day. Like it was raining, and then it was like hard rain, and then all of a sudden it snowed, and it came down like crazy. I mean, it was like inches in like minutes. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden everything was covered, and then it turned to like hail. And then it was nothing, and the sun was out, and we're like, oh, good. So we're driving to my aunt's. We leave my house, and the sun's out. And, like, literally, like, 5 minutes down the road, I mean, you know the ride to their house is, like, really quick. It was like a fucking whiteout. It was, like, out of nowhere. Like, the wind picked up, and it started hailing again. It was crazy. And then we got there, and the sun came out again. It was really weird. It was like a St. Mary's party, Scott, the weather.
Oh, yeah.
So,
we know that, too.
Yeah. Kelly, how was your day? Do you celebrate Christmas in Canada? How does that work?
Just in the last couple of years, an act was passed by Parliament. Yeah, no, it was a good day. It snowed in Vancouver, which is rare because it usually just rains all winter. And it was actually snowing on Christmas Day, just very lightly. But that was cool. I had a great day and capped off by watching my Eagles squeak one out against the Raiders. Yeah, well, they clinched home field advantage in the NFC. That's probably going to be the high water mark for the season, unfortunately. But I got 3 weeks to worry about that.
Yeah, that has like Seattle just destroying them written all over it, doesn't it?
In the playoffs, well, I'd say it'll probably be like New Orleans coming in, I would guess, for the second round.
Well, they'll be the one, right? So my prediction is Seattle's the 6, and they beat the Rams, and then come into Philly and destroy them.
Well, that would hurt because in Vancouver there are, of course, tons of Seahawks fans, and I have to put up with that shit all year and have for the last 5 years.
I do agree, Kel, that the Eagles remind me a lot of last year's Cowboys. An inflated record with a kind of a weak schedule, and then they're going to lose. Although, JR, I don't know. I watched the Seahawks. I mean, the Cowboys played atrocious, but the Seahawks really weren't that much better.
The Seahawks are one of those. Yeah, but they just shut down Prescott. Like, you know what they'll do to Nick Foles? Fucking destroy him.
Yeah, I know, but I still think the Rams and Vikings are better than both of them, to be honest with you. My personal opinion.
Seahawks are one of those teams, I don't know. The Seahawks are the closest thing to, like, the Pats, where they can just turn it on for, like, 3 games. You know what I mean? Like, Wilson is so good, I would pick them over any other team right now, just because of the quarterback. The Vikings are probably more complete, but I wouldn't bet against Russell Wilson in the playoffs. For as an Eagles fan, Kelly, and anyone who's like a Vikings fan or whatever, like you should be rooting very hard that Atlanta gets in over Seattle. That'd be what I'd be rooting for because you don't want to see them in the playoffs. They're just one of those teams that if they get hot, if Wilson gets hot, they can just dominate.
I mean, you know what team is really the worst, though, in terms of just like paper team is Jacksonville. I mean, there was no business them losing to the 49ers Christmas Eve. That was humiliating.
Game.
Blake Bortles is terrible. He throws an awful ball.
Yeah, I mean they messed up by not trading for Eli. I mean, I've said it all year that I think they pissed away what could have been a pretty good window. But we'll see. I mean, they got the defense. I think as a Patriots hater, I'm just hoping Baltimore gets in because they're a team that could maybe fluster the Pats a little bit. They always play them tough. Fuck Tennessee. Hopefully they don't get in. But that's it. Any other thoughts on that, Kelly?
No. Just a great season destroyed on one play. Basically, it sucks. But
so much like Oakland last year, like they were looking.
Totally.
Carr gets hurt. It's like the same thing.
Yeah, horrible timing.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of great timing, let's dive into our house because Kel, everything fine on your desk? D'Amato didn't pop the head off the Laney McDonald bobblehead. Everything's straightened out. All right. Good.
Did you check your toilet tank? Because you probably left an upper deck or somewhere in the
house. Anyway, it's time to go to our home office, Madison Square Garden, 33rd Street, for June 14th, 1987. I'm looking forward to these shows, JR, and Kel, because and I've said this, Kel, on our last when we had John on for the May show. This is almost like a black hole for a lot of even older, definitely newer wrestling fans, but particularly older wrestling fans because, obviously everyone remembers for the most part that Andre was not around for most of the summer, if not the whole summer. So it's interesting to see how the product was TV-wise with Hogan and everything. So I'm really looking forward to these shows because, I'm just curious to see like what they do to kind of fill the time. And we obviously have something big we probably should talk about tonight. In terms of belts. But, I'm kind of looking forward to it, Kel. What are your thoughts before we start, how this summer could go? Did you feel, kind of an empty I don't know. I mean, was the summer kind of interesting for the WWF at this time going in? Like, were you feeling optimistic?
Well, back in those days after Mania, they kind of, checked out for a few months and, didn't really do too much. I was watching it real time in 1987. I don't remember too much going on. Like, I remember back, like, when the fall hits and Strikeforce win the titles, spoiler alert. But in between, no, not really too much going on.
So curious to see. All right, so we are at the Garden tonight. As usual, the roster was split into threes. The other two sides, we don't have full cards. Our good man Graham Cawthon at thehistoryofwwe.com did not have the full rosters of matches, but we did have two other shows on this evening, and certainly this time around, not in locales that that could be comparable to Madison Square Garden, that's for sure. One roster was at the Community Center in Tucson, Arizona. Community Center, mind you. Very interesting. They weren't even at the University of Arizona. They were at the Community Center in Arizona. And it says the Honky Tonk Man was there. However, are we going to do it now, JR? Are we going to wait till next month? You want to mention it now?
No, I think Greeny's got it. By the way, quick note on our team here. Jeff Jarvis is going to focus on the ebook work. So Jason Greenhouse has stepped in on our fun facts here. I think he has it in here. So why don't we talk about it in a minute when we get to the timeline.
All right. So anyway, Honky was at the Community Center in Tucson. The other group was at the Convention Center in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Jesus.
And all Graham has is included Nikolai Volkov. So if you want to fill the Convention Center in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, the guy you want on the poster, Nikolai Volkov. So anyway, that's so 1/3 of the roster was at the Community Center in Tucson, Arizona. The other third was at the Convention Center in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And of course, the rest of the roster was here. All right, what else we got, JR, before we start?
All right, yeah, so here's Greeny's timeline on 5/20/87. And Kelly, maybe you have some insight on this. I don't really know too much about it, but Memphis court judge ruled that due to Jerry Lawler's lawsuit against the WWF for promoting Harley Race as the king of wrestling, Race could not use that nickname in Tennessee, nor could he wear the crown and robe to the ring. Any insider info on that one?
I remember this in the magazines at the time. They would talk about it, like lawsuits and all that. Because the magazines by, 86 even, maybe even 85, had turned totally on Vince because he basically kicked them out of the Garden and all that. So they were kind of bitter. So by 87, the Aftermags were totally pro-NWA, anti-WWF. Right. So there was a lot of these, shoot stories that were mixed in with all the fantasy articles, the usual fantasy articles and stuff. And I definitely remember this. I guess it happened. I mean, it was a long-standing thing to the point when Lawler came to the WWF in 92. It was a big surprise because you never thought it was going to happen because there was so much bitterness, especially on his side, for years over the King thing, basically.
So he keeps wearing the crown of robe in general, right? Because the way this is worded, I wasn't sure. Because it says he can't use the nickname in Tennessee nor come to the ring wearing his crown of robe. I didn't know if that meant that was in Tennessee as well, or overall he couldn't do the crown of robe. But I think he still keeps going with it, right, for a while?
Yeah, I think it was just in Tennessee, and I don't think they were running very many shows, if any, in Tennessee at all. Right. So it really was a moot point.
Yeah. And like anyone in Tennessee isn't going to be confused. I think Lawler's He's clearly the fucking king of Memphis. We know that. This was just a dick on the table thing. All right, May 23rd, Superstars. The Snake Pit was switched from Challenge to Superstars, and Jake started getting some different guests, including Harley Race and Bobby Heenan. We had a special report on the health of superstar Billy Graham, where it was announced that he was about to have major surgery, but Graham was determined to get back to the ring. We'll see more of that as we move forward on these shows. The debut of a new talent, the One Man Gang, with Slick, defeated Jesse Cortez. I believe that was Andrea's husband on 90210. The episode closed with comments from Bobby Heenan. He said he would unveil a new tag team the next week. And then another piece of news here. On 5/26/87, Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik were arrested together on charges of drug possession, pulled over by police on the New Jersey Turnpike on their way to a house show in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Duggan was charged with drinking. I guess we know who did that arrest. Duggan was charged with drinking and driving as well. So this is a pretty legendary, well-known story. Do you guys, obviously I wasn't really cognizant at this point, but do either of you guys remember hearing this, like, news-wise?
Yes, I do, definitely.
Yep.
I definitely did. Yep.
And the same, it was in the Aftermags. It was reported. And that was, I think, now looking back on it, one of the first moments where I, questioned whether wrestling was real. It may have been, a turning point, because they were feuding at the time.
I saw it in the paper. I saw it in, the Daily News or the Post. I think I saw it. It was definitely in the regular paper, yeah. Yeah,
it was a huge scandal. Vince was furious. He fired both guys on the spot, basically.
Right.
Should have kept them both fired. I know. Yeah, it was definitely in the Post and the Daily News back in those days. So it was definitely a big deal.
Yeah, big whiff by. I mean, at least Duggan got the 3 payout, I guess, before I did this. But for a guy who just arrived, kind of not really getting off on the right start with Vince at all.
That was pretty dumb.
On the 5:30 Superstars, the Islanders defeated Rick Martel and Tom Zenk by countout at 3:52 when Zenk failed to return to the ring after getting body slammed in a diving headbutt from the floor from Tama. Midway through the bout, Bobby Heenan showed up and was later revealed to be the Islanders' new manager. So the Islanders have gone heel. We'll see them here later. Kelly, any thoughts on this heel turn by the Islanders?
It was really well executed. Because they'd been, of course, baby faces up to this point. It was a pretty big shock.
Yeah.
It was doing, heel turns in general were pretty rarely done at the time. And it came out of nowhere. And
do you think they needed the boost?
Yeah, because they came in hot. Remember, they won the Tag Team Battle Royal. Mm-hmm. But then it seemed immediately afterwards they were jobbing to everybody. And they were just floundering. So definitely, we'll see in the coming months. This definitely was the right decision and it paid off big time.
Do you think it was weird, though, Scott, that they pretty much said they're not going to be title contenders in a way because you have heel champs. They turn them heel. Obviously, we'll see a feud that they get into, but did you think it was a little weird on that realm that they took them out of title contention, basically, from a kayfabe point of view?
I do, particularly for Bobby. But I think it was there was a real overflow of babyface tag teams at the time. So we could have used another good heel team. And the Islanders were kind of treading water, it seemed like. So I thought that it was a good opportunity for them. Maybe they could have waited a little longer to see, whenever the Hart Foundation would lose. But it felt like that, and I'll mention this later on in some of my comments on our matches, that they definitely seemed to be restructuring the tag division anyway. So this is probably a good move from a freshness perspective for the Islanders. But yeah, now you're kind of putting yourself behind the 8 ball because, obviously in the kayfabe era, you're not going to be Islanders with a title shot. So, but it was a freshening up for them. So it was needed, but I understand that it makes perfect sense that you kind of, boned yourself in terms of not, of taking yourself out of title contention unless unless the Hearts turn face, which was maybe something you think about, at the time. But not with Danny Davis, but we'll talk more about him later.
All right, also talking about getting off on the wrong foot with Vince McMahon. On June 3rd at the Wrestling Challenge taping in Rochester, the AWA team, the Midnight Rockers, made their WWF in-ring debut, defeating Jose Estrada and Jimmy Jack Funk. Following the show, Michaels and Jannetty got into an altercation with Jimmy Jack at a bar and were fired from the WWF right afterwards as a result. So another team comes in, finally cracks the big time, and then immediately gets shit-canned due to a stupid altercation. I mean, this has been talked about quite a bit. Shawn Michaels covers it, like in his book and whatnot. He talks about how they were kind of baited into this fight with Jimmy Jack Funk and painted as like partiers and crazy guys, and they got shit canned pretty much like the next day. Everyone was talking about it at catering and whatnot. So Kelly, after this, you go right back to the AWA, pretty much, right?
No, they actually went, I think, to Memphis, or no, Continental.
Okay.
In Alabama, and then to the AWA. It was kind of blurry. They were kind of in the wilderness for a bit. I think they'd burned a few bridges and were kind of, a team that nobody wanted to touch a bit. So they had to do their penance in the lesser territories for a bit.
And then, because after this, when they had the legendary stuff with Summers and Rose, right? Is that 88?
No, that was before.
Oh, that's right. That was 86.
That was in 86.
That's right.
That was in 86.
Yeah, 86, early 87, and they were red hot. And then, the whole thing in the WWF kind of sidetracked them for a good year.
Yeah. We'll be back. And one other big piece of news here, then we can get into the show. On 6/13, the day before this show, the Honky Tonk Man defeated Ricky the Dragon Steamboat on Superstars to win the IC title at 353. A huge upset, something I don't think, you guys again were watching, I wasn't, but I can't imagine anyone in the right mind when this match started thought that Honky Tonk Man would be leaving the ring as Intercontinental Champion.
Absolutely not. Oh. Absolutely not. I was stunned. I was legitimate. I remember very vividly, I was legitimately stunned.
Yeah, I was outraged. I was heartbroken.
I was pissed.
Steamboat was one of my favorite guys, and I hated Honky. I knew Honky from Calgary before WWF, so I'd hated him for a long time, and I was totally outraged that he.
I just hated him because I thought he sucked. But if you were going to have, there was, in my opinion, at the time, if Steamboat had to lose, I just felt there were so many better heels to lay down, and then of course we know the backstory on this, but I was pretty pissed. Pretty pissed,
and it was so soon after beating Savage, after chasing him for so long, and then. Yeah, at the time, I just hated it.
I'm going to talk about this a little bit more next week because this is a match that kind of spurred my thinking. But my hot take is actually that they made the right move at that time. I didn't think Steamboat had been super interesting with the title. Now, granted, we've only seen him a couple of times. I thought his money and heat was all in the chase of Savage, and it felt a bit anticlimactic with him as champion.
I totally agree.
I don't know if it was their plan anyway. I know circumstances got in the way and made them have him drop the title, the birth of his son and all that. I don't know if they were going to plan for short reign anyway, but I just thought there was actually more to do with the title with it on a guy like a Honky versus Steamboat, especially with Hogan on top as your face world champion. I actually thought it ended up being a pretty shrewd and positive move for the company versus I know the thought is, well, Steamboat could have been having all these great defenses, but we've talked about how thin the heel roster is. Like we mentioned it when we were talking about Piper back at WrestleMania 3, kind of what could he have been doing? I don't know, who out there could Steamboat really have been feuding with anyway? So, I don't know. I was looking back at it. I'm kind of okay with it.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. You weren't. I wasn't at the time.
Well, yeah. As a kid, you're not. But now, looking at it,
I thought Honky was just a terrible choice. But obviously, as we know the backstory, Vince kind of got pinned against the wall. I suppose we can get more into this because we'll have them next month.
Well, he didn't because he didn't have to. He didn't have to take it off him. He just wanted to. to make
well, no, he was taking it off him, but Honky wasn't the original choice, allegedly in urban legend.
Have you ever seen that story confirmed, Kelly? The Butcher Reed thing? I feel like a lot of people have said it and it's been regurgitated a ton, but I feel like it hasn't really been ever finally corroborated. Like it's one of those things that seems to get shot down and brought up all the time.
Yeah, I think it's just a rumor, because there's also the fact that when Honky won the belt from Steamboat, they did a backstage celebration with all the heels, right? And Butch Reed is there. So I know it's apparently isn't the story that he missed the taping or he skipped the taping. So that's obviously not true.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But for Honky, it was the right call, because I think Honky's reign was, if I was watching it now as a fan, it was great. I mean, he was a great chicken shit heel. Mm-hmm. He's the catalyst for Macho Man turning face and the Mega Powers forming. And yeah, he had a really good run as just a guy you hated so much and you wanted to see lose, and he just wouldn't lose, and it went on and on and on. And I think, it was actually a brilliant booking decision in retrospect.
Yeah. No, I've enjoyed him more than I thought I would so far watching this. So, All right, why don't we head to the Garden, guys? Gorilla and Lord Alfred welcome us into the show here, as they usually do. Set the stage for what's to come. Bobby Heenan then is in a neck brace, and he joins us as well in the booth. And we've talked about that, still nursing that injury at the hands of old creamy Ken Patera. Opening things up for us is the Can-Am Connection, Rick Martel and Tom Zenk taking on the Shadows, who tonight are being played by Randy Colley and Jose Luis Rivera. We've covered both of them before. Poor Randy Colley goes from demolition to a shadow.
Yes.
What a drop. Poor guy.
Should have let him just go back to being Rex.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Instead of this.
Skip the rest of this
nonsense. Just make Estrada a new Moondog.
Moondog Jose.
Jose Luis Rivera, the Moondog.
Moondog Jose. That would have been great. So, Kelly, we talked briefly last week with D'Amato about Tom Zenk's passing. But since you're our official historian and bio guy, we thought we'd take a little bit more pause, because we didn't get too deep into it, and kind of just talk about his career, because I think this is actually the last time we see him anyway, so it kind of worked out timing-wise anyway.
Yeah.
So this is it. This is his final appearance here on the Place to Be podcast. So why don't we take a minute, or why don't you take a minute, talk about just kind of, his passing and his bio beyond that.
Yeah, well, his passing just a few weeks ago. Apparently he had died, I think, 9 or 10 days before. And then it was reported he basically dropped off the face of the earth in the last 15 years or so, after being involved a lot with Meltzer and Alvarez on the old radio show, and a lot of shoot interviews and stuff there. And speaking of Meltzer, his bio in the Observer on Zenk was actually really, really well done. I recommend everybody check that out. And I cribbed a few facts from it. So, you requested a bio. I mean, Tom Zenk was a guy I never really liked. I guess in the Can-Am Connection, I was into them. They were a cool team. But, of course, later on with Tito, I was much more into that variation with Martel. And then Zenk in the WCW just really never really did it for me. I mean, I didn't really get to see WCW too much until he was already past his peak there. But he was still featured heavily on TV. It seemed every week. The Z-Man was on TV.
I agree with that. He was definitely one of those guys that was in my cognizance of, because I barely was watching at that point, but I knew of the Z-Man from, I think I even had his figure. The old Galoob. Was it Galoob, the old, rubber guys? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So
I had that, and I had some WCW trading cards. He was definitely, him and Pillman, that team, was definitely in my consciousness for a while. So he was someone I was definitely pretty aware of, too.
Yeah. And he had a great look. I mean, he was a total, a quintessential 80s pretty boy wrestler with the look. The women loved him. And this was, when he got into it was when we had the beginning of, women coming to wrestling shows more often, with all the tag teams, especially in the South, and then later all over the United States. And, I mean, he was from Minneapolis. He was born November 30th, 1958. So he was not quite 60 years old when he passed. And of course, he was from the legendary Robbinsdale High School that I don't know, there's tons of wrestlers that came from there in the 70s or future wrestlers. And he was in the same class as Rick Rude and Kurt Hennig. They all graduated together, and they were friends in high school. But he kind of went his own way after that, got into bodybuilding first and won a few contests. And through bodybuilding, they kind of overlap with wrestling in a lot of ways, in a lot of circles. Someone recommended him to go to pro wrestling, and Meltzer writes how he was sold on it at first as like, oh, it's a con game. It's all about conning the marks out of their money and all that. And that was Zenk's introduction to wrestling. So he always had this sort of negative attitude towards wrestling, that he was just in it for the money. It was, he didn't really have much respect for the fans. He loved the women. He loved the partying side to it. And, but his heart wasn't so much into it, was kind of a knock on him. He was trained by the legendary Eddie Sharkey in Minneapolis, who trained a ton of notable wrestlers: Bob Backlund, Jesse Ventura, the Road Warriors, Nikita Koloff, Medusa, Rude, Barry Dorso, the Steiner brothers, then later like Jerry Lynn, Sean Waltman, and even Austin Aries. So like an unbelievable resume for Eddie Sharkey.
Jerry Flynn?
He may have been in there too.
He's in the block.
Yeah. So Zenk debuted in 1984, wrestled a bit in Mid-South just for a week or two, and then abruptly left, told Bill Watts he had to go back, I think because his dad was ill. And then Watts, of course, the man's man, was like, oh, this guy's a pussy, that sort of stuff. But that was sort of the beginning of Zenk's rep as leaving territories abruptly. And he would go to his home in the AWA, and he was basically just a jobber to the stars. If you look at his record in 1984, he lost almost every match he was in. But he was still highly regarded enough to actually finish in a tie for the Wrestling Observer Rookie of the Year that year, with the future Jushin Liger. Yeah. It's interesting. Someone who was just pushed as a jobber to the stars was a winner. But I guess, I haven't seen any footage, I don't think, of Zenk at that time. But I think he took to it, he took to wrestling pretty quickly. He was, just the people that he was associating with. It was like going to Harvard almost, for wrestling. So many great minds, so many great workers. He teamed with Hennig quite a bit when they were young. His first kind of break was going to Montreal in 1985. And that was there was an association with the AWA and Montreal, but I think it was particularly Rick Martel, who was the AWA champion and also part owner of the Montreal territory. And this is when the association with Martel and Zenk began. That would last for a few years and actually, would shape Zenk's career for quite a while. He returned to the AWA in August 85 and was pushed, but then he abruptly left and went to Portland. And Portland, he was a star there, but the territory was dying. This was 85, 86, past the peak. But Meltzer writes this was Zenk's favorite territory. He considered it the best years of his life as a star in Portland. A lot of wrestlers loved their time in Portland because it was a small territory that you could drive around easily. You could be home every night. You didn't have to stay at hotel after hotel, and you could have a more normal life there. And he was a star. He had his choice of all the women that he wanted, and he was young. He was just having a great time. He went back to Montreal, further established his relationship with Martel, and this was when they signed with the WWF. And Martel was behind the scenes quite a mover and shaker type. He booked a lot. He was a promoter. He helped wrestlers out. He was quite influential. And Montreal had basically sold their territory to the WWF. This was when the Rougeaus came over, Dino Bravo. Suddenly had an influx of all these French guys in the WWF. And so they started teaming, and they appeared on TV briefly, for one round of tapings in the WWF, and then went to Japan for a tour. And it was the tag team tournament that year. They were in it, and they faced a lot of top teams at the time. I know there's a match between them and the Funk Brothers out there that's pretty highly regarded that I never got around to watching, but a lot of people said it was really good. And at this time, they also wrestled in the Montreal Forum against the British Bulldogs for the tag team titles, and it was the main event. Yeah, because Montreal, for years after, would always have, these specific to the city main events that they didn't run, the WWF didn't run anywhere else, where they would push the French-Canadian guys. And this was one of them. Main event, the Bulldogs worked heel against the Can-Am Connection. And I don't know if it was a sellout, but it was a really highly attended show. This was in November '86, so just at the beginning of their run. Built off totally on their time spent in Montreal previously. And then we have his run here in '87. Well, this is it, right? We're not going to see Zenk again. So what happens is the Islanders turn heel in the match against the Can-Ams. That was going to be the beginning of a big feud. That never happens because Zenk abruptly leaves. And the story Meltzer tells is that Zenk got it in his mind that Martel was being paid a lot more than he was. And Martel has always denied this. Martel has always said tag teams were always paid the same. It's always equals. They didn't want to cause any kind of friction there. But Zenk insisted that Martel was getting more, so he wanted more money. There was a bunch of, arguments between him and Vince McMahon. And then he just left. Apparently, they tried their hardest to bring him back because they were just about to start this program, but he wouldn't. And then Martel on TV actually calls him a quitter. They do an interview. That's how bitter Vince was. He was super pissed. Nobody leaves the WWF when they're being pushed. And Zenk did. And, the truth obviously lies somewhere in the middle. I mean, I don't know. Zenk always maintained it was a money issue strictly, but I think there was something else obviously going on to cause him to just leave like this. And that kind of derailed his career for quite a while. He went back to the AWA for a few months in early '88, but left quickly. He kept going back to Japan. I think he enjoyed it there, probably made a lot of money. Worked a lot of tag teams in Japan over the years. He teamed with Johnny Ace quite a bit in Japan. A few more dates in the AWA. He was in the Battle Royal where Zbyszko won the AWA belt after Lawler was stripped of it. Actually,
he was the last one, I think.
Yeah, Zenk was the last guy eliminated.
Yeah.
That was like a big Battle Royal that they hyped where Dusty Rhodes was coming, Tommy Rich was coming, and neither of those guys showed up.
No.
Dusty called at the last second, hey, baby, I'm stuck at the airport or something like that. The AWA was in serious crisis mode at this time. Sergeant Slaughter did come back for that and then stuck around for a while. But Zenk, he didn't last too much longer in the AWA after that. Went back to Japan, and then he came to WCW, debuted at Clash of the Champions 8 in September '89, and was pushed pretty hard at first. Looked like he was going to be a guy that was going to be in the mix. The NWA/WCW was going through a total youth movement at that time with Sting and Muda and the Skyscrapers and Pillman and all those guys. And it looked like they had this, briefly it looked like they had this really cool roster of young guys, but it all went to shit within a year. And he was put in a tag team with Pillman, as was mentioned already. That they had the U.S. tag belts and feuded with the Midnight Express. And then he was the TV champion for a couple months, but then kind of just drifted. Then he entered that period that I mentioned when I started watching WCW, where he was on TV all the time and the fans loved him. He was super over, but didn't really do too much. The one main match everybody should see is his match against Brian Pillman at Wrestle War 92. Mm-hmm. For the light heavyweight title. Mm-hmm. That's a really good match. That's like a 4-star match. Meltzer apparently helped lay that one out the night before. Yeah, he I think the story just came out recently that he, because he'd been watching all the Japanese stuff, that he suggested a bunch of Japanese type spots in the match. And if you watch that match, you'll see that it's definitely atypical for WCW. It's very different,
right?
With a bunch of near falls and stuff like that. It's a pretty cool match.
Pillman and Zenk could have been the original Young Bucks.
Oh, that's a good one. And then, he stayed in WCW until early 94. Apparently he was like way out of shape at the end. I don't remember this. But like he stopped caring. He was like, well, if I'm not getting pushed anymore, I'm just going to stop working out. So apparently he looked pretty bad in his last few months there. He had one last run in All Japan in 94. And he last wrestled in 1996 for the short-lived AWF promotion, which was, it had syndicated TV, and it was based out of Chicago, like Chicago, Minneapolis. And it was kind of like a half of the old AWA mixed with half of like a few other cities in the States. And he appeared, and like they had a bunch of former WWF guys on their roster. Tito Santana was their champion. Bob Orton Jr. was there. Valentine, Slaughter, Coco Beware, Nails, Honky Tonk Man, like a ton of guys that are on the current WWF roster. Barry Dorso.
Who's who of WrestleCrap.
Yeah. Who's who. Yeah. And that was it for him. He wrestled a few shows for that. And then, did a bunch of the shoot interviews on the radio, on the Meltzer's old radio show, and then vanished. And then died. Rest in peace, Tom Zenk.
Yeah.
I think he won the TV title, too.
Yeah, it was a very short run. Yeah, I think it was a couple months. Yeah, it was very short.
Yeah, 90, I think, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, well, there you go. The Life and Times of Tom Zenk, as told by Kelly Nelson and Dave Meltzer. So here we are. The Can-Ams continuing to work the circuit, slowly building their case as top contenders, looking for another win. They battle the Mysterious Shadows, the new batch of masked men in the Federation. Martel and a Shadow open up as Gorilla's already talking shit on the masked guys here. Martel gets a few shots in but gets tied up in the corner. The Shadows double team for a bit. Martel dodges a charge and lands a hip lock as he fires up the crowd. Bobby talks about how the Can-Ams came together in a condescending way as Shadow starts to work the arm until Zenk tags in and lands a nice drop kick. Zenk and Shadow reset and lock up as Gorilla asks Bobby when he's going to stop gold bricking with that neck injury. Bobby says he's planning a major lawsuit as the Can-Ams clean house. Zenk and Shadow reset again as Gorilla continues to troll Bobby. The Can-Ams dominate for a bit, quick tagging and wearing down the arm. Martel eventually drives both Shadows to the floor with drop kicks, and when we reset, the Can-Ams are right back at it. This has really been a complete squash at this point. The Shadows look like they're completely lost. Zenk gets a near fall and a rollout, but he gets trapped in the corner, and the Shadows finally take over and start to club away. Zenk gets dropped with a hot shot and choked as the Shadows meander through their offense. Zenk eventually comes back with a nice stiff forearm to the face, but's cut off before he can tag. Zenk gets trapped in a front face lock and then double teams some more. A Shadow gets off a nice vertical suplex, but Zenk was able to get his knees up as the Shadow came off the top, but again got blocked from making the tag. The Shadows go to work again, this time focusing on the midsection. Zenk dodges a charge and makes the hot tag to Martel, who comes in and wipes out both Shadows. And a second later, Martel gets a hard cross-body block for the win. Bobby grabs the mic after the match and starts talking shit to the Can-Ams on behalf of the Islanders. Martel tells them to bring them out right now, and Bobby beckons them. And the Islanders show up, but officials keep them apart. Bobby and Martel talk some more. Martel tells him to sign a contract since his boys can't read or write. That's a little harsh. This felt never ending. And while the structure was sound, it was just I found it kind of boring during the middle part. The Can-Am opening squash was too long as well, and the Shadow shit offense just didn't help anything. Because of the length, I thought there was enough here not to be useless, but it still wasn't that great. And I thought the post-match was great. To me, that bumped things up a bit. It was better than the match itself. But overall, this whole thing took a ton of time between the match and the post-match. I went 1.5 stars on this one, Scott.
I went 1.5 stars as well. Your match time, and you're going to see a lot of 4-digit match times tonight, 18:56. So obviously we had a very thin roster tonight if we had a bunch of matches that go long, because that's not even close to the longest match of the night. I was expecting the Can-Ams to kind of carry the Shadows a little bit better. But yeah, the squash segment in the beginning was a little drawn, and if Jose Luis Rivera is your work rate guy on your tag team, you're pretty screwed. So I think they were doomed from the start. And this was way too long. This match did not need to be 19 minutes. They could have put it somewhere else. It was not good.
Never ending. It was never ending. The post-match was awesome, though.
Oh, Bobby coming out saved it. No, I agree with you 100%. Bobby coming out saved it, pumping up the Islanders. And he was obviously, Gorilla and them. It was a good, that kind of saved it. And I feel like a lot of our MSG matches that are real trash get saved by the commentary, and this was one of them. I've not not much more to say here, Kel. 1.5 stars. Unless you have the life and times of Jose Luis Rivera, I don't think there's much more we need to say.
I could probably do that off the top of my head.
He's not dead. His relevance is dead, but he's not.
Yeah, I think he's still alive. Randy Colley's still alive.
Yes.
Yeah, this was interesting. I liked it a bit more than you guys. I gave it 2 stars. I'm a huge Rick Martel fan. I just love him. He's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. And it had been a long time since I'd seen 80s Rick Martel, so this was a treat. So as it started with the shine, I was happy. This was cool. But then it just kept going and going. And then I remembered, oh yeah, some of these WWF 80s tag matches have these just ridiculously long babyface shines. And this one maybe broke the record, because I don't think the Shadows got on offense until about 12 minutes into the match. At this point, I named them the most incompetent tag team ever.
Awful.
The Cleveland Browns of the WWF. Or, to be more topical, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the WWF.
That's right.
In 1987. Yeah, there was no heat really in the middle part. And then when the Shadows got some heat, the fans just didn't take them seriously. They were such losers. But this match did rally, I thought, at the end, because eventually, they did get a pretty long heat on Zenk, and by the time he made the hot tag, the fans were hot for it and ready for it. And so there's a big pop for that. Ricky has a great House of Fire, and I like the finish, because that was a cool spot with Martel doing the crossbody sort of out of nowhere on that corner spot that they always do. So kind of a unique spot to finish it. And it was a clean win. The Faces won. I'll never need to see this again, but it was okay at times.
Yeah, Martel and Zenk complete. Any bright spots of all of them. The Shadows were fucking terrible.
Yeah. Well, they have no credibility. They're just the lowest of the low. Even the Moondogs had more credibility than the Shadows.
What's sad is you're going to see them on TV a lot throughout the summer, because they're on primetime literally every week for like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
They're like followed around the circuit. It's dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful.
Yeah, Colley, he must have really been checked out here. He was good in the past, but this was just a mess. Estrada is dragging him down. He probably looked over and saw this, saw Demolition tearing it up, and then he's with this jackass in the tag team, mass team.
Yeah, no, it was kind of like a pity. Some pity thing tossed by McMahon after him being bounced from Demolition to have one last run under a hood.
Yeah, the whole reason he wasn't Demolition was because he was recognizable, right? So it was either going to be Moondog or this. That was about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to our next match, the never-ending feud between Billy Jack Haynes and Hercules. We've seen this now. Is this our 4th or 5th time? Because they fought what? The big event, MSG at least one other time, WrestleMania 3. Yeah. Was there another MSG match with these guys?
No, just 2.
Okay.
But like 7 months apart from each other.
August 86. Right, it was August 86, big event. WrestleMania 3, and then here.
Yeah.
I feel like there was another one, but I guess not, huh?
No.
Right, not another Giants main event?
He had the back-to-back with, who the hell was it? Was it Orton? Remember, he had he had a couple of Orton too in there. So he's kind of been in spurts with guys. He doesn't really bounce around too much. All right, so here we go again with these two guys. 2 big powerhouses tussling. Hercules looking as jacked as always. Waits in the ring as Billy Jack comes out in his Oregon clown gear to a nice pop. Bobby is not in the booth or at ringside as Gorilla Nelson's feud is still going. Al says, we haven't seen who has the better Phil Nelson yet. That's why they're still battling. Herc spits at Billy Jack, who comes out with a big flurry at the bell, sending Herc down to the floor. Herc returns when 2 feel each other out until he clobbers Billy Jack in the neck. Billy Jack comes back running at Hercules, running him to the buckle, and then planting him with a shoulder block and some right hands and a big body slam to a pop. Billy Jack goes for the full Nelson, but Herc fights it off and gets to the ropes and then out to the floor. Herc comes in and begs off a bit as he's hobbling around, but Gorilla thinks he's playing possum. Billy Jack ignores it, levels him with a hard clothesline, and follows with a vertical suplex. Billy Jack spikes Herc down with one-arm slam, and then misses a dive off the middle rope. Herc wrecks him with a clothesline and then starts to punish the back in and out of the ring. Herc peppers away at the head and back and shoots Billy Jack hard to the corner. Herc fends off a comeback and kicks and chokes away and dominates with some power offense and near falls. Herc chokes away with his tape and goes to a chin lock. Billy Jack breaks a bear hug attempt and then kicks Herc hard to the mat. And Al calls him out for being lax and notes he may just be wearing down, though. Billy Jack punches away. Hercules knees him in the gut and slams him down hard. Hercules grabs the full Nelson, but he can't lock the fingers, and Billy Jack powers out. Herc maintains control with strikes, and Billy Jack comes back with a hard clothesline and flurry of punches before choking Herc again with the tape. Billy Jack takes Herc over with a backdrop and a side slam and an elbow drop for 2, and the two big men trade right hands, and then Billy Jack cuts Herc down with a back elbow, as both men are quite spent by this point. Herc leverages Billy Jack to the floor and rolls outside where he hammers away. Billy Jack fires back, and eventually they both roll back inside, where Billy takes Herc down but misses a falling headbutt. They trade blows until eventually we get the bell for the draw. Way too long, way too soft of a finish, as this feud just needs a fucking winner at this point. Just give us a winner. Some fun and some well-executed stuff in here, but it felt just like the opener. It just went too long. It was dragging by the end. A better finish bumps us up, probably, as is so much meaningless downtime to mean anything for what's been like a pretty detailed feud between these guys. So I went 2 stars just because there's some spurts in there, but overall it was just kind of boring, Kelly.
Yeah, it's a boring match, boring feud. The thing is, at this time on the house shows, they were doing chain matches built off the Mania 3 finish. But I think why we just got a regular match here is because you already have the Texas Death Match later on, and you didn't want to throw in another gimmick match. I'm just guessing why because like at this point it's almost 3 months past Mania 3.
Right.
To just go back to another regular match between the two at MSG doesn't seem to make sense. It should have had a gimmick attached to it, and I'm thinking maybe because of the other gimmick match on the show they didn't. Because even in this match with the tape, spots, choking and stuff, it seemed like they were like reenacting the chain match, just using the tape, the wrist tape. There is one on tape of the chain match. I think it's on Even More Unusual Matches, really old Coliseum home video, taped from, I want to say, like Kingston, Ontario, of all places, like some weird location. And it's not that good. There's, I think, double juice, but if I'm not mistaken, Hercules ends up winning that match too. Like, Billy Jack just was not we chronicled this, I think, before about his weird booking, especially at MSG, where he's been in a DQ win, a double count out. And his match with Hercules the prior time at MSG was also a 20-minute time limit draw. I don't think he had a clean win, Billy Jack, once, as a guy that was being pushed quite a lot. They were really lukewarm about him. Anyway, the crowd was into this, though. Like, the feud had gotten over. The whole battle, the full Nelson thing that was just so terribly important in 1987.
We need to know who has the better one. They must fight till eternity.
And it never was resolved. I don't think they ever solved that problem.
Herc clearly isn't very good at it. He can never lock the fingers. It's always his problem in these big matches. He can never get them locked. So maybe it's him, the execution.
I guess so. I thought this was a pretty dull match. Just a lot of random clubbing. The action wasn't very compelling. Billy Jack has a wedgie at one point that unfortunately he doesn't do anything about.
He's like, fuck it. I got nothing else going on in this match. Might as well show my ass off.
Yeah. So he works the last 5 minutes with a wedgie. And then, of course, we get a goddamn time limit draw. And it's why. I just went 1 star on it. I'm pretty down on Billy Jerk and have been the whole time he's here. Hercules at this time was actually capable of being in, good stuff. But yeah, this feud, it's. I think this is it. Finally, I'm pretty sure. Fittingly, it ends with a dull time limit draw.
Just like it started.
it's pretty much a microcosm of the whole feud in one match here. Yeah.
What do you think, Scott?
They couldn't even time the time limit right, and I would wish they had stiffed us time, but no, they had to go over. So even though the time limit was 20 minutes, we were given 22:55. So we actually got an extra 3 minutes of nothing. Yeah, this match is terrible. I don't know why we haven't had a definitive winner yet. I just don't get it. What are we waiting for? What's the end game here?
No, they don't want either guy.
All the feuds.
I could see why Billy Jack wasn't going to lose because he had to come back later. And Herc, I don't know. Maybe they figure he's lost too much lately with the Hogan shit and whatever else. I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't either. It just makes no sense. Hercules also hurt. You saw that his hammy was wrapped, and that kind of hindered him. So, if you were going to give a match on this card a draw, this was probably not the one to do it. It was terrible. Lumbering around. I gave it. I think I split the difference between you guys. I gave it a star. I gave it a star and a half. It was not good. It was just a lot of clubbing and lumbering around, and there wasn't really any story being told.
Yeah.
We get to the half-assed full Nelsons. It was just a shit show. There's really no need for either of these guys to ever wrestle again. Have them move on to other stuff. In my opinion, Herc was the winner of this feud because, he left, Billy Jack a bloody heap on the biggest stage of any of them had in the feud. I think it's fine to just move on. Herc, obviously, a little more bankable. Although, for some weird reason, Billy Jack had to do double duty on this night. We'll get to that later. But it just... Of all the guys that whoever was the agent that night thought would be best to go 23 minutes, these two were not it.
I think they would have short a match as an out of fill time. They're very clearly down guys on this show. Whether it was the three towns or guys who's not being this is a time where maybe we didn't need the three shows. Like the depth is clearly a problem because there is not a lot of guys on this show.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if they almost got ribbed too, and making them go 20 minutes again and having it go almost 23 minutes because you could see at the end they were just slugging and looked like they were looking around. When's the bell gonna ring?
I know. Yeah.
I think they were probably ribbing them a bit on this one, having them go out and do another draw and just not because in the WWF they never had the countdown for the final minute, so you never knew when the hell the bell was gonna ring. So
they were definitely like fumbling in the dark.
They had nothing.
Match.
Nothing to do.
And poor Herc out there with his messed up hamstring, just gutting through this whole thing.
No, they were cooked. Yeah, they were cooked. This match was awful. It's our first draw in a while.
Yeah, he's a guy that Herc has really impressed me. I will say that overall in this run so far, he actually made his way into consideration for my greatest WWE wrestler ever list. I don't think he would have even been near my top 100 probably a year ago. But since we've been doing these shows, he's actually climbed his way up. So I'll save that reveal for next few weeks. But I just thought I'd throw it in. So, all right, why don't we head backstage? Gorilla Monsoon's with Hulk Hogan. Hulk talks about taking out Andre and how Heenan's still after him. He says people thought he was crazy for saying he would quit if he can't beat Harley Race tonight, but that is not an overreaction. He stands behind the statement and does his usual insane narrative telling as well throughout this whole thing. So Hogan's fired up for his big rematch here tonight. That takes us to our next match, where those newly heel-turned Islanders return for their second appearance of the evening to take on Jim Powers and Paul Roma. Rapidly gelling team. It's worked out well for two guys that were kind of going nowhere. So I thought this is a good team for those guys. They almost replaced the Islanders in a way as depth in the on the face side of the division. So that's good, too, to keep the balance. Gorilla talks about how much more dangerous the Islanders are now with Bobby and compares it to when Jimmy Hart picked up the Hart Foundation and turned them around as well. Tama and Roma open things up as Gorilla says a contract between the Islanders and Can-Ams has not been signed yet, but it has to be at some point. We get some basic feeling out and arm work to start as Gorilla and Bobby read off all the various tag teams in the division, wondering even if King Kong Bundy and Paul Orndorff should be teaming up eventually. Tama fires away at Roma and lands a shoulder block, but Roma comes back with a hip toss, slam, and drop kick that sends Tama outside to regroup. Bobby comes over and talks some smack about Ken Patera as Tama returns and tries to bait Roma, who sniffs it out and continues to work over the Islander. Haku tags in, but things don't go much better for him as Roma keeps him off balance. Powers tags in, and him and Roma land a double back elbow, and even Jimmy gets hit with a hip lock, and then then Jimmy Powers hits a hip lock and goes to a headlock. Gorilla says Powers looks bigger every time he sees him, which is not an overstatement at all. Tama tags back in, but Powers controls the arm and then snaps off a drop kick that sends Tama back out to check in with Bobby. Al's impressed with how quickly Roma and Powers have gelled. Roma's back in, cracking the arm of Tama, and then tags Powers back in for a double dropkick for 1. Al tries to piece together Bobby's game plan as Powers goes back to the arm. Roma's back in, and we get more arm work until Haku tags in and gets a dropkick. Roma dodges the leg drop, but Haku goes to the eyes and clubs away as Gorilla's surprised that Roma's hair hasn't got messed up yet. Haku whiffs on a falling headbutt, but Tama trips Roma as he hits the ropes. Haku maniacally stomps away. Tama tags in, comes off the top with an elbow and kicks and chokes away. With the ref tied up, Haku comes in and they double choke and stays there till Tama sneaks out. Haku fends off a sunset flip and lands a nice inverted atomic drop. Tama then tags back in and we get more choking, and then Haku sneaks in behind the ref's back again. Haku gets a trap nerve hold as Roma quivers and tags in, and then Haku tags Tama. Roma blocks a suplex and he gets one of his own, but is too spent to tag. Haku comes in and we get a double chop and a headbutt and back rake. Tama's back in working the neck, getting near falls. Haku comes back and buries a thrust kick to the throat, but he ducks his head on a whip and Roma boots him to the face. Haku blocks a tag, gets a front face lock, and then tags Tama, who grabs that hold as well. Haku comes in and baits Powers, allowing them to double team. Haku slams Roma, but that misses a somersault splash, and Roma finally makes a tag to a big pop and cleans house. Powers cleans house as the fans are rocking. Powers tries for a backdrop, but his legs buckle for some reason, and Tama just kind of falls on him. Tama slams Powers for 2 before things break down. Haku levels Powers with a backbreaker, and Tama splashes him off the top for the win. That was a great finisher. I love that finish. A really fun tag match. Both teams were crisp and flawless in everything they tried to execute. The opening shine was fun. That heat segment did not drag at all, not like our opener. The crowd was into things as well, and the Islanders are just tremendous heels, doing all the little things beautifully, whether it's double teaming, landing an extra shot here and there, sneering at the ref. Just everything they do is perfect. And Roma and Powers have really helped each other, too. Powers obviously wasn't doing much, but Roma was lost. He was in that weird tag team with SD Jones and all that shit. But this really gives them some purpose. I thought this was pretty fun. I went 3 stars, Scott.
Your runtime, 19:02. So another marathon. Yeah, I gave this 3 stars as well. This was a lot of fun. Good combination, and Roma and Powers have definitely kind of settled into a good groove. And again, I think it's another example of the growing tag division, because we said earlier in the year that the tag division in the company was not good, and I feel like over these next few months we're going to see a nice evolution of tag teams to kind of beef up. And I think the Stallions, again, replacing the team they're facing, the Islanders on the babyface side. Excuse me. I thought it was a good back and forth. Some nice work. And again, Roma was the guy that I think they wanted to kind of showcase. But Jim Powers definitely has kind of surprised them as actually being a pretty solid guy to settle in and become that, that really good young tag team. The Islanders are just really good. I think it was Alfred that said it, that Tama has really embraced like being a bad guy with Bobby as our manager. Like, Haku's Haku. He kind of just does his thing every day. Mm-hmm. But Tama kind of added this extra aura of arrogance to him. And you can see it in his change in personality, and I think it's kind of helped the makeup of the team. So that's a good thing. And I think Roma and Powers are just a really good, young babyface team that you can add to the roster, the tag division. I agree about the snarky comment about Powers. Well, he's looking quite big. Yes, he is. And that's going around. Not surprised Islanders won, obviously. Got to push them as they've just changed. But really a good match, Kel. And I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was surprisingly good. And I feel like even though the roster's thin tonight, I feel like the workers have showed up for the most part and have done their best to kind of keep things going. And this was a good match. Unlike the previous match, which shouldn't have been 23 minutes, I was perfectly fine with this one being 19 minutes.
Yeah, no, I agree. 3 stars. I'm a huge fan of the Islanders. And yeah, like you said, Scott, like Tama, this was the role he was born to play, was a heel. He was great as a babyface too, though. He's a really, really underrated wrestler.
Yes, I agree.
But going ahead, this is, one of the great things about the Islanders is Tama's just full on heel, talking smack to the fans, just being a total asshole. And this was only a couple weeks after they turned, and I don't think he played heel before this at all. He maybe had in a smaller territory, but he really got it fast and just really ran with it. Roma and Powers, they weren't doing anything individually, and together, they're pretty good. Like a C-level babyface, blowjob babyface team, basically. But good workers and good in against a good heel team like the Islanders. But we have the Islanders coming out wearing clip-on bow ties. Did you notice this?
I don't think I noticed that.
Yeah, I had to play it back.
I didn't catch that either, actually.
Yeah, because I didn't notice it at first, but then I noticed Heenan was holding like the ties, and they were also wearing cummerbunds. So they were like a Chip and Dale dancer look.
So were they mocking Can-Ams maybe?
Maybe. Yeah,
like
that's a
pretty
good point.
boy thing?
I just thought it was earlier in their heel run, and that, they were experimenting with stuff. I was like, well, what'll get heat? We'll dress up like Chip and Dale dancers or something. I don't know. But they definitely were wearing.
I wonder if it was mocking the Can-Ams. I think that'd probably make more sense, right? Because the Can-Ams are kind of the pretty boy Chip and Dale kind of looking guy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't think of it, but I don't think they ever go back to that look again.
Very weird.
Very weird. This was another long match, but like the babyface shine also was quite long in this one too. But the Islanders, of course, a much more serious team than the Shadows, much more respected team than the Shadows, so the crowd actually cares. There was good heat throughout. The hot tag was built up well. Huge pop for the hot tag. Good House of Fire. The one thing was the finish was a little weird, or at least what happened right before the finish, where Powers was going to give a backdrop.
Yeah.
To Tama, and his back went out.
It was weird. His legs just like collapse.
Yeah. So was it a botch, or was that actually like a planned spot? I don't think
like a botch to me. It looks like his legs just like gave out.
Yeah, I think so. Because they didn't work on his back or anything.
Yeah, it did look very awkward. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no story before about his back being hurt or anything, so it didn't make sense.
Yeah, I think he just, I don't know what happened. If his legs just gave out or if he just tripped or something. And then, like Tama just kind of lands on him.
Yeah.
Or Haku, whoever it was.
Yeah, I think it was Tama. So a little minor complaint there. And yes, like you said, JR, the finisher was awesome. Tama can get great heat off the top rope. So we're looking at a good little run to come for the Islanders here, and then we'll see those young Stallions will be in some good matches too going forward.
Yeah, the Tama heel stuff is really good. He's so good at it. Just the sneer at the ref, like you said, the shit talking to the crowd. He'll always land that extra little kick or punch or whatever to the guy as he's on his way out. He's so great in that role.
Fit perfectly. And Haku was just kind of like the blunt force object of that team, whereas Tama was the kind of the personality of the team with Bobby. He kind of embraced it, whereas Haku's like, here we go. So there you go.
All right. Back to the ring for a very weird match as the Junkyard Dog takes on Paul Orndorff. This feels like it was like straight out of fucking 1985. Very weird match to be thrown out here.
It was the main event probably in 1985. Yeah. That's the sad part.
It's weird now. Way out of left field. We haven't seen Orndorff in MSG or TV pay-per-view since like January, right? Have we seen him at all since the Hogan stuff? Or I guess he may have had one match in like February or something, but I feel like we haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah. No, after the Hogan feud ended, he pretty much became invisible, and then,
we saw him in January against Steel, and before that was Saturday's main event. Yeah, so we haven't seen him. We haven't seen him at all. That's crazy. So here he is. He pops back up. Still a heel, still with Bobby Heenan, still hated. JOD stomps out to grab them cakes, gets a nice pop. Definitely a match, again, 2 years ago would have been a big draw. Bobby says JYD has been on holiday, looks rested and in great shape, which was obviously quite a lie. We get some stalling and mind games on both ends early on as Al says Bobby's stretching his parameters with all these people in his stable. He also says he has an enviable stable but no champions. He's really digging deep on Bobby here. Al's now carrying, says JYD's carrying extra weight. Gorilla says he's been hitting the pancake house and never misses a chance to chow down. They just going in hard on JYD. Bobby pops in and Gorilla says he's seen Orndorff in better shape before. Everyone's getting ripped on this one. We get a lock up in the ring with a clean break as Gorilla and Bobby make a bet on the match. JYD snapmares Orndorff down and the two trade missing blows until Orndorff dodges a headbutt and hits the deck. Paul returns and JYD starts to work the arm as Gorilla says he's quick even at this weight. Orndorff pegs off and regroups and we get a breakdown of each man's strengths. JYD's back to the arm and then goes to a head scissors when Paul breaks free. Orndorff begs off again and then blindsides JYD with a clothesline. Orndorff follows with some elbow drops and kicks to the head, and Gorilla says he's working the wrong area, of course, because that has no effect on JYD. JYD shakes it off and fires up, loading with right hands and gets a small package for 2. Bobby trips up JYD from the floor, and the dog pulls him up, but Orndorff decks JYD from behind. The dog drops a pair of headbutts, but Orndorff catches him on a charge and hits a hot shot for the win. Gorilla chastises the ref for not DQing Orndorff after the trip by Bobby. This really sucked. It was plodding, slow, and boring. Orndorff has just really gone off the cliff. His heat has dissipated quite a bit. He doesn't feel important at all here. He just feels like a relic already. And JYD is fucking fat and is really slowing down and held this one back a lot. I think Orndorff could at least still go. But this dude, JYD, cannot. A little bump because I like the finish, but just a half star here, Kel.
Yeah, me too, half star. Yeah, this feels like a super stale match. And yeah, like you said, 2 years too late. Yeah, I mean, yeah, at least a year. It's Orndorff was pretty hot a year prior to this, and JYD was not too bad. But yeah, JYD is in full junk food dog territory now. He's pretty out of shape. Orndorff was hurt, during the Hogan feud, his shoulder or his arm, and yeah, he was never really the same again. So this match was just meaningless now, totally. And they were over at first. JYD's still crazy over, but the heat didn't last. And yeah, it was a very dull match. And no, it's a sad end for Junkyard Dog and pretty sad end for Paul Orndorff too.
I mean, JYD, he looks like shit, but he still feels like a little relevant in this match. Like, he doesn't feel like he's put out the pasture. He just looks like shit. Orndorff feels like, he feels like he's been gone for a decade when he comes out here. Like, he feels so old at this point. It's weird. Like, he doesn't look old. Like, he looks fine. He just feels so irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. I know, it's strange. At the beginning of the year, they had that, him and Hogan had one of the all-time classic Saturday Night's Main Event matches, and now in June, he's, totally irrelevant.
I also gave this a half star. It's our first sub 10-minute match, but not by much, though. 9:47. Orndorff, I think a lot of it visually is that he obviously didn't ride the WrestleMania wave. He was, noticeably absent. So the fact that he hasn't been part of any build has kind of made him feel ancient. And I didn't realize he was still with Bobby. I thought he had returned face before eventually leaving, but he was actually still with Bobby, which kind of surprised me because you don't hear Bobby talk about him that much. I think that's another reason. He's technically still a family member, yet you never hear Bobby talk about him.
The only time was earlier in the show when they talked about him and Bundy maybe teaming up or something like that.
Right.
But Al's jab is a valid one where he says all right, your stable's fucking bloated, dude. You get a lot of fucking guys right now in the Heenan family.
Yeah, and obviously Orndorff is one that needs to also be put out to pasture. JYD he's just a shit show. I mean, this is easily a match that 2 years ago was second to last on the card, or maybe even a main event. Not here though. This is just it feels like a novelty. I think somebody said novelty. It might have been you, JR. It feels like a novelty match, almost like Slamboree in WCW years later. It just feels like two fossils come out and put on a lousy TV match just to give the crowd a chance of seeing the past or something. It had a very not nostalgic, vintage feel to it that I think hurt them a lot. And neither of them have anything left. There's nothing left for either of them. Obviously, Orndorff, once the Hogan feud ended, was pretty much shot. There was nothing left for him to do. And JYD is just doing it to himself. I mean, he could still be relevant in the company if he didn't, if he could put down the pork rinds bag. It's bad. I mean, pork rinds and fucking cocaine is pretty much what his diet was at this point. And you could see it. I mean, he's fat. He's sluggish. I mean, Gorilla and Alfred were like two of his biggest fans and two of his biggest supporters, and now he's just trash. So it's kind of hard to not see it, So it's just a big mess. It's a big joke, and it was actually if these two were going to wrestle, it was probably a good slot on the card before our next match. So. I don't know where else you would have put it. Maybe the match after the next one, but
not at all.
Yeah, or that too. Yeah, maybe first. So Paul Orndorff gets the win, but who really?
JYD's headed back to the Pancake House. Gorilla just fucking lays him out with that one.
Destroys him. Going back to the Pancake House.
He's never missing a meal, JYD. He's always hitting the fucking buffet.
Going down to the Manhattan IHOP. All right. Why don't we take a break? We had a pretty good meaty first segment. We have 3 matches left. JR, very meaty. Very, very like JYD meaty. I don't know, JR. So far, definitely better than last month.
I guess.
No, it's definitely better than last month.
Yeah, it has. No, it's actually been okay. That last match helped the tag. That helped a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. Kel?
Yeah, I mean, watching this earlier today, I didn't have any problems really getting through it.
Did you watch the May show? I know you weren't on with us. Did you watch it?
No, I didn't.
All right, well, you didn't miss much, so.
Sounded horrible.
Yeah, you didn't miss much. This is definitely an upgrade.
Oh, no, there's been way, way worse MSG shows than this one.
Yeah, no, this has been pretty good so far. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, 3 matches left, including our big main event, the big rematch from last month for the World Wrestling Federation Championship, and then a big 6-man tag as well. So, myself, JR, Kel, more after this.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey, pro wrestling announcer Kevin Kelly here. I want to make sure you are all subscribed to all the great feeds here at Place to Be Nation. It's really easy to do. Just head to iTunes or your preferred podcatcher app today and search and subscribe to the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, which of course includes the full archives of the Kevin Kelly Show, the Place to Be Nation pod feed, and the Pro Wrestling Only feed. Subscribe, listen, and then rate us and leave feedback today. And be sure to give Justin your true thoughts. I mean, don't hold back. After all, he is kind of a jerk. Just listen to Scott.
Place to Be Nation's JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we offer those to you on 3 great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, we bring you the Mothership, the original Place to Be podcast, as well as Main Event, Lucha Afterground, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows, as well as the Our Vantage Point podcast and Jeff Learns Wrestling. In addition to these full-length shows, we also deliver quick-hit pod blasts on topics old and new.
Over on the Pro Wrestling Only feed, we dive deep inside the wrestling business with a stacked army of experts leading the way. The feed features potpourri shows such as This Week in Wrestling, Greetings from Allentown, Psychology is Dead, Puro Potpourri, Stacy and Elliot's Bogus Journey, and the Military Industrial Suplex. We also have shows that focus intently on certain topics like Letters from Center Stage, Space City, and NWA Classics On Demand Adventure, Through the Years, Strong Style History, Strong Style Story, and Mount Olympus. Plus, the feed has the full archives of legendary shows like Titans of Wrestling, Where the Big Boys Play, Letters from Kayfabe, and much more. And on our popular Place to Be Nation Pop podcast feed, we offer such great shows as the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Rank and File, PTBN Dadcast, Go Home in a Box, NBA Team, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with the Hard Traveling Fanboys, Sellers Points, Todd Weber's Conversation, Geek and Sassy, and Imaginary Stories podcasts.
You can find all of these current shows plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to all of our feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others, available on PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth stretch projects and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when shopping online, and download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Bonehead's Wing Bar in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and Fall River, Massachusetts, TheHistoryOfWrestling.com, and Scott Keats' Blog of Doom. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Hey, this is Dr. Tom Pritchard, and you're listening to the Place to Be podcast on the Place to Be Nation.
All right, Nation, we're back taking a look at the June 1987 Madison Square Garden house show. And I must say, whenever we're firing up these shows, usually on Monday, tonight on a Tuesday, I'm always looking forward to and being very excited to talk to you guys. And we always are here talking about wrestling, 'cause that's what we do here, always, on the Place to Be podcast. And speaking of always, that is the song you hear underneath us by the one and only Atlantic Star. And joining us for our Pop Culture Corner this week is the one and only Scott Criscola. Scott, take us through what you always take us through.
All right, JR, thank you. And as you hear, yes, Atlantic Star, one of my favorite songs of the year, 1987. It is your number one song. And incidentally, guys, I'm setting myself up for something, but it'll take JR a few minutes probably to come up with a good singer. But 2 nights before this, I got to confirm it because I do have it in front of me, but on that Friday night, June 12th, I graduated from 8th grade. So this was a big weekend because I remember watching the show on MSG that Monday. So, big weekend for me. Moving on to high school in the fall. But and this was a big song when I was in 8th grade. Atlantic Star with Always at number 1. Number 2, Kim Wilde. She was still in the top 10. She was in the top 10. We were in May. And she's hanging around with You Keep Me Hanging On. Number 3, great song. Lisa and Cold Jam with Head to Toe. I think I love you. Kelly was dancing this.
From head to toe. It probably was.
At number 4, Little Genesis with In Too Deep. Number 5, our girl Whitney Houston with I Want to Dance with Somebody. At number 6, we
Scott's
have
big 8th grade dance song right there.
Oh, right here, baby. Little Krista Berg. Lady in Red is dancing with me.
I hope he sang it better than you did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He definitely did. Krista Berg, Lady in Red. At number 7, great song from a great album, Wanted Dead or Alive from Bon Jovi from the fantastic Slippery When Wet album. Probably my favorite song from that album. At number 8, Diamonds by Herb Alpert. It's one of JR's favorite guys.
My man, the Tijuana Brass.
Tijuana Brass, baby. I didn't realize he had a song in 1987.
Yeah, he did some stuff later on, yeah.
Yeah. So he's at number 8.
Scott looked wistfully across the room at a young Anthony Armento.
No. I wasn't even close to knowing it back then. He didn't go to dance. What do you have in mind? He was setting up for Mass the next day.
Yes, he was. Planning a funeral.
Yeah, exactly. At number 9, your former number 1, the number 1 song we had at the last house show, which was U2, With or Without You, which was our number 1 on our last house show, down to number 9. And at number 10, Just to See Her by Smokey Robinson. Just to see her. That was like such a generic 80s pop song. But so there you go. There was your top 10, which came out 2 days before, Saturday, June 12th, 1987. And your number 1. The dogs.
Oh, God. I actually haven't heard this at a wedding in a long time. I feel like like the early weddings I went to in my life, this was definitely a staple.
Oh, there's no doubt. Oh, yeah.
I don't think it was much of a mixer song, though, for me. I think it was mainly like weddings or like anniversary fucking dinners or something, you know what I mean? Like something like that.
Yeah. I might have heard this at like our 8th grade church. Like our
sure. It just come out.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I mean, you listen to it, though, and it doesn't really have that like teenager sound to it, but it was still definitely a slow dance staple.
It's more like a mother-son dance fucking song. That's my...
Oh, God! Well, maybe where Kelly lives. No. I don't know. Is Chris the Bird Canadian? He kind of sounds it. Cal, what do you think? He's from Moose Jaw?
Sure. No, somewhere in Ontario, probably.
Lady ready.
Hey, lady ready. Dance with me. Chic to chic, eh? Anyway, so there's your top 10. All right. Let's go to the... Let us go to the... I'm sorry. I just want to refer something. This was a Sunday night show, not a Monday night. So I'm sorry. It was the 13th of June was when the Billboard Countdown came out. So it's a Sunday night. It was the house show because that was the big deal that Fink made last month. So this was Sunday night, Sunday the 13th, the countdown came out. So Friday night the 12th, my graduation evening, we had 3 movies come out, JR. And actually, we got to discuss a little bit one of them because we do have a wrestling crossover tonight. A wrestling cinema crossover. So 3 movies.
Cheerleaders?
No. 3 movies came out. 2 of them
Candida Royale?
No, Dino Royale.
Candida.
No.
Candida Royale.
Candido Royale, no. All right. We have a comedy that made just $1 million.
Speaking of Moose Jaw.
Speaking of Moose Jaw, it was called $1 Million Mystery. So, this is like the only unknown one. Our next 2 movies are definitely very, very well known. So.
Sidney Preston, a disgruntled White House aide, takes off with $4 million that belong to the government. While on the run, he starts at a roadside diner to have a world-famous chili, where he suffers a fatal heart attack. Before dying, he reveals to onlookers the location of the first $1 million. The occupants of the diner head out in a mad dash to find the loot. Starring Tom Bosley, Eddie Deason, Wendy Sherman, Rick Overton, Royce Applegate, Penny Baker, Kevin Pollak, Hardboiled Haggerty as Awful Abdul, Rudy DeLuca, Paul Stadler. I don't see much else.
Is this a bio of you? It should say a future podcast host eats some Bobby Valentine's chili and almost dies at his co-host's couch.
Right.
And he tells him where his hidden stash of Coliseum videotapes are.
Matt Rotella would be the last person I see.
Yes.
Hardboiled Haggerty, was that the wrestling tie-in you had?
He was a wrestler. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Was that your tie-in, Scott, or is there another one?
No, not at all. Actually.
Oh, I don't know if that was it. Yeah, he was in the movie. Yeah, the wrestler Hardboiled Haggerty was in the movie.
Yes, we're pumping up the great Hardboiled Haggerty was our big. Well,
I don't know. It's kind of weird. He just happened to be in it.
No, it was weird. No, this is it.
He was Awful Abdul.
Awful. Maybe that was his name in. Well, I don't know. Was that his tag team partner, Kel, with Tiger Jeet Singh? Is that what he was?
I don't know. I just know he looked like Kung Fu superstar Billy Graham. That's what
that's awful.
Hardboiled Haggerty looked like.
I was thinking he looked like the guy that played what's his name in the TV show, the guy with the big beard. That's what he reminds me of. Anyway, no, the wrestling crossover is now because the number 2 movie of the weekend, which made $59,735,548, so a big box office film. And the reason I'm saying it's a crossover, JR, is who has been conspicuously absent from our MSG house shows?
From my vantage point, Jess, that would be The Body.
Which means, what is the number 2 movie of the weekend? Predator.
Let's pull that
That's
up.
where he was. Yep.
Oh, man. It's a depressing image. I pull it up on Wikipedia. It takes me to this predation. It's just a polar bear just tearing apart a seal on the fucking front of the Wikipedia page.
That was Hardboiled Haggerty's last match.
I am not on a hot streak with Wikipedia searching. When Jeff and I were talking about the Jumping Bomb Angels, we went to the hentai wiki page. And it was just very intense. All right, the Predator franchise here. Let's see. Predator film. All right. A spacecraft flies near Earth and releases a bright object which enters the atmosphere. In the Valverde jungle, Major Alan Dutch Schaefer and team, Medic Mac Elliott, Billy Soule, Blaine Cooper, and Jorge Pancho Ramirez and Rick Hawkins are tasked by the CIA with rescuing an official held hostage by insurgents. CIA agent, liaison, and former U.S. Army Colonel George Dillon, a former commando and old friend of Dutch, is assigned to supervise the team. Starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Bill Duke, Richard Shaves, Jesse Ventura, Shane Black, Hard-Boiled Haggerty, and Kevin Peter Hall, and Sven-Ole Thorson. So there you go.
What a fantastic movie. I haven't seen that in ages. Maybe it's on Netflix or Hulu. I'll have to watch it. Great film. I haven't seen the second one in a while either, Predator 2. But so there you go. There is where Jesse has been and why we've only seen him on Saren's main event, WrestleMania 3. He has not been back to our building here at the Garden for quite a while, actually. So there he is. But that was not the number one movie of the weekend. Number one movie of the weekend is slightly more, believe it or not. $63,748,955. Very well-known film with one of our greatest American actors and three pretty crazy chicks. The movie was The Witches of Eastwick.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, what did you say?
3 Men and a Baby.
3 Men and a Baby. No, I don't think that came out for...
3 Women
that might come out later this year. I think that came out in '87, the first one. Yeah, we might catch that later in the year.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, with the mysterious ghost behind the kid behind the fucking curtain or whatever. That might come out later in the year. But no, The Witches of Eastwick, JR.
Alexandra Medford, Jane Spofford, and Suki Ridgemont are 3 dissatisfied women living in a picturesque town of Eastwick, Rhode Island. Hey, Alex is a sculptor and single mother of 1 daughter. Jane is a newly divorced music teacher unable to have children. And Suki has 6 daughters and works as a columnist for the Eastwick World, the local newspaper. The 3 friends have all lost their husbands through either passing away, divorce, or abandonment. Unaware that they are witches, the women unfortunately form a coven and have weekly get-togethers to share their fantasies about their ideal men. That lasts longer than 10 seconds in the bed. Jack Nicholson, Cher, Susan Sarandon, Michelle Pfeiffer, Veronica Cartwright, Richard Jenkins. Of course, if there's a movie set in Rhode Island anyway, Richard Jenkins has to be involved.
Yes.
He was Clyde Alden and Carol Strucken. And originally, Bill Murray was considered for the main role that Jack Nicholson got. Richard Jenkins, I actually have met him around here a couple times. Lives in Rhode Island, of course, is in Step Brothers and all the Farrelly Brothers movies usually. And have I told the story before when I met him, Scott?
He's the dad, right? He was the dad in Step Brothers?
Yeah, he's the dad in Step Brothers. So we're in line.
No, I don't think you did.
We're in line at the Big Greek Festival in Cranston that we go to every year. And my buddy Jason was with us. And so he's in front of us. So we're taking a few minutes to kind of piece together, like, if we should say something or not. And this is like a really long line. So we're waiting forever. So finally, we're just like, all right, hey, Richard, big fan of your work. Thanks. So Jason's like talking about like, was he in Deadwood? Was that the one he was in? He was in like one of those shows, right? So he's talking about that, this and that, and I tell him I love him in Step Brothers, and he starts giving me shit, starts ripping me hard. Richard Jenkins, he's like, oh, glad to see you have such highbrow taste in movies. He's like, of all the stuff I've done, you bring up Step Brothers. I'm like, Step Brothers is fucking great. I'm like, you're awesome. And he's like, yeah, well, you think you'd have more, he's just really busted me up, but really, really nice guy. We try not to overdo it. I didn't do the picture thing. So yeah, cool guy from Rhode Island in a ton of movies, including this one.
Mm-hmm. I forgot this was Rhode Island. I knew it was New England. I thought it was like Maine or something. I didn't remember it being Rhode Island, but now that you said it. So there were your big movies of the weekend: Predator and The Witches of Eastwick. And I think actually, if you've ever seen it, Jack Nicholson was a better choice because he was really creepy in this movie, and Jack Nicholson does creepy very well. Bill Murray does not do creepy very well, so it was probably a better choice. Let us go to the Diamond on this Sunday. Of course, this being a Sunday, the 14th of June, everybody was in action on this day, including Mr. Nelson, your Toronto Blue Jays, who lost to the Baltimore Orioles at Memorial Stadium by the score of 8-5. You know who got the loss? Mark Eichhorn took the loss for your Blue Jays, 8-3. Dave Schmidt, not the no, it's Dave Schultz, was 7-1, got the win. Let's see. The Yankees lost at home to the Brewers 6-4. Dave Righetti gave up 2 home runs in the 9th inning. My dad used to get so pissed off watching Dave Righetti play a pitch. Anyway, Rags took the loss. Dan Plesac, current MLB Network analyst, got the win for the Brewers. Meanwhile, the Mets won in Pittsburgh by the score of 7-3. Your standings to this point in the American League East, your first place team is Toronto Blue Jays. At 39-21, 3 games ahead of the Yankees.
Stealing signs even back then.
6 ahead 6 ahead of the Brewers, and 6.5 ahead of Detroit.
Well, it's a very bittersweet season for the Jays.
We will get there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be around to talk about it again, but yeah.
We'll let you know.
That's fine. Yeah.
Checks in the mail. The Twins were leading the West by 2 games over Oakland and 2.5 over Kansas City. The Cardinals were leading the East by 6 over the Cubs, and 6.5 over the Expos, and 7.5 over the Mets, who were not off to a very good start that year, the defending champs. And in the West, the Reds were leading the NL West by 2 games over the Giants and 2.5 over Houston. Let's see. Both the NBA and NHL seasons were over, but on this Sunday, earlier in the day, at the Forum in Inglewood, the Los Angeles Lakers completed one of their greatest seasons ever, 65 wins in the regular season. They defeated the Boston Celtics 106-93 in Game 6 of the NBA Finals to win the NBA championship, their 4th world title of the decade. So congrats to Magic and the gang. And the hockey season had already ended. Couple of weeks earlier, the Edmonton Oilers won another Stanley Cup. They beat the Philadelphia Flyers in Game 7 at the Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton. So congrats to the Oilers. Congrats to the Lakers. We are now full bore into the baseball season. And that is your pop culture report. Back to the Garden, JR, for a huge match, our actual main event of the evening.
It is. First, we stop backstage, though. Gorilla and Lord Al are with Outback Jack, who talks about his big match with Jose Estrada, who says, Puerto Ricans are feisty, and Gorilla says you have to be tough to survive down there on the island. Jack talks about how both have experience with jungles. Gorilla talks about Estrada's resume, and Jack says he's happy to be back at MSG, looking for his 2nd win here. Al puts over Jack's modesty, despite coming from a bigger island than Estrada. I love Al's weird-ass fucking ways of measuring life. It's just so weird. You come from a big island, so you should feel much less modest. Al also reminds us that Jack is undefeated, and Jack explains how a boomerang works. So a very loaded promo here with all kinds of shit going on. Gorilla and Al are then back at ringside with Dave Winfield of the New York Yankees. Gorilla says Dave is contemplating issuing some challenges, but Dave says they have plenty of time still to take over the division despite their injuries. Dave says when he retires in 6 to 10 years, maybe he'll be an announcer, and says whenever he's home and not playing baseball, he's watching the WWF. Of course, we've seen him before, so he's clearly a very big fan. Yeah.
So there you go, Kelly. Winfield calling out your bitches right there.
Hey, well, the only world title he ever wins is for Toronto, so...
Oh, wow!
Yeah. His old team won how many cents, that one, though?
not with Mr. May on the team.
The Twins? They won a couple. No.
I think he did actually play another 10 years, though.
The Twins didn't win one after the Blue Jays won, though.
No, they won their 2. No, they won their 2 before the Blue Jays.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So
next up, like you said, Scott, is our main event. That is our rematch from last month as Hulk Hogan puts his WWF title on the line against Harley Race. It's a Texas death match, and Hogan's also said if he loses, he would leave. Fink explains all the rules, setting a nice ominous tone. I liked the way he kind of explained everything. And he also tells everyone inside the barricade to vacate or stay at their own peril, which I thought was a nice touch, too. So all the photographers and everything scurry. Gorilla reminds us that Hulk said he would quit with a loss. Bobby and Harley slowly walk out, and Bobby tells the fans to show respect for the king. Hulk storms out next wearing his old-school white Tyson boots, which I thought was interesting. Race jumps Hulk as he gets on the apron, but Hulk fights him off and backdrops him to the floor. Hulk punches out and punches away, and then rams him to the barricade, and back inside the champ punches away again and lands a clothesline, and then chops Race to the floor. Hulk comes back and rams Race to the announce table, chokes him with some tape, and then breaks a chair over his head as Harley's dome knocked the seat right out. Hulk then shoves Race to the apron, and Race lands a low blow. Back inside, the challenger goes to work, hitting a pile driver for a near fall. The fans really try to rally Hulk here as Race gets a nice gut-wrench suplex for 2. Hulk reverses a whip to the corner and sends Harley flying over the top into the floor in a nasty bump. Hulk follows out and stalks Bobby, but Harley nails him from behind and shoves him to the ring post. Harley pops Hogan in the throat twice with a chair and then jams it to his upper back. Race whiffs on a falling headbutt to the floor and then heads back inside where he punches away and cracks Harley with a big boot. Hulk follows with an atomic drop and clotheslines Harley back outside where he collapses into some empty chairs. Hulk raises his eyes Hulk rakes the eyes and spikes Harley into the post and then slams a chair into his back in the aisle. Harley's ripped open, bleeding, as Hogan pummels the cut, but Harley fends him off and gets a stiff pile driver on the floor. Race shoves Hulk back inside as Bobby hands Harley the title, which he uses to nail the champ in the gut. Al says Harley's being complacent as he drops his head on the mat and saunters to the top rope. Harley comes off with a headbutt, but Hogan rolls away and Harley hits the mat and headbutts the belt. Hulk then fires up and crushes Harley with the belt and covers for the win. Hulk nails Bobby for fun and then poses to a big pop. Red hot brawl here, filled with a lot of energy and hate. Really reminiscent of Hogan's great sprint brawls from 85 and 86 that we haven't seen as much. The crowd is really revved up here. Both guys busted their ass the whole time. Never slowed down. The pile driver on the floor was nasty too. Harley's been a great challenger here, adding a lot of legitimacy and bumping like a nut for Hulk, who still reigns supreme on top of the WWF. I went 3.5 stars on this one, Scott. I really enjoyed it.
This match was ridiculous. I gave it 4 stars. Your match time was 9:56.
Yeah, just a little short. I wish it was a little longer.
Oh, I could go another 10 minutes of these two beating the fucking shit out of each other. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'm curious your thoughts too, Kel. I was actually I'm looking at my shelf here in Studio B, and I was pumped when they actually did a Hogan unreleased matches or little known matches DVD, because, and I said this last month with D'Amato and JR, and I've said it in past house shows. There are 2 Hulk Hogans during the Federation era. There was the pay-per-view TV Hogan, and then there was the dark match local show Hogan. The pay-per-view TV Hogan had to do the paint-by-numbers, goody-goody, mushy-mushy matches to cater to the kids. Nothing too violent. Very, very paint-by-numbers, move, spot, shake, leg drop, done. Get him in this local atmosphere, particularly the Garden or Boston or the Spectrum, and you see a different Hulk Hogan. First off, you'd never see him wearing anything but yellow and red on TV, on national TV. That was the branding of your champion on national TV. Now he comes out with I didn't even realize, I totally forgot when I saw it today, that he came out with the white tights and white boots. I'm like, fucking A, man. That's what I like to see. Time to think outside the box on these specialty matches. And you just see Hogan come in, and he's just beating the shit out of him. Just potatoing him over and over and over. And you got a guy like Harley who's like, just fucking bring it, bitch.
Yeah, he didn't care.
He didn't care. That's Harley for you. Fuck this. I would have given another 7-8 minutes just watching the two of them beat the shit out of each other. That's the Hogan I like to see. And I look, I get it. And I'm curious your thoughts too, Kel. I get that he can't be ridiculously violent when you're trying to market him on Saturday Night's Main Event and the pay-per-views. I get that. I understand. Which makes it even more special when we watch these house show matches with the smaller audience. Yes, it's on MSG. We get that. But not many people had it. Even in this stage, even if you had a dish, the rare people that had a dish, you didn't see these MSG outside of the tri-state area. So seeing Hogan in this environment, just being a badass, just fucking pummeling Harley and then taking a beating and smacking him with the fucking chair and everything. That's the Hogan I like to see. That's a guy that's fighting for his life, not just dancing around and doing all the shit on Saturday Night's Main Event and WrestleMania 3, yeah, obviously it was a different beast, but as we'll see over time, that he wrestled a certain way on pay-per-view and on Saturday Night's Main Event that he didn't wrestle on the local house show circuit. So this is a specialty to see him this vicious, going all out on. Now, is it weird to see the champion say, I'm going to quit if I can't beat Harley? Yeah, it's a little odd.
Well, we talked about it last week, and I'm curious Kelly's thoughts on that too when we get to his comments. Because John mentioned, was it really what made him escalate so much to put his what did Harley really do to piss him off so bad? Because it didn't seem like much. And we kind of said, well, maybe he was just fed up with Bobby, and it drove him to this. But I'm curious Kelly's take on that too, Scott, when you're done.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what brought him to the point to be this violent, which is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was awesome just to see Hogan this vicious that you don't get to see on the national stage. Easily, I gotta say, maybe one of my 2 or 3 favorite Hogan MSG matches that doesn't involve Savage. And it goes down as one of my favorite Harley WWF matches, if not my favorite Harley WWF match. And I just gained more and more respect for Hogan as I'm watching. I already did, but now I really do, because if you had the privilege of seeing him, locally, and I saw some house show matches of him at New Haven Coliseum, and I vaguely remember some really good entertaining stuff. Nothing to this level, but Kel, it's like he flipped a different switch. This is the Hogan you wish you could see. And then he probably wouldn't have been insulted so much over his early career that he had fucking no talent. Well, he was pretty much insulted his whole career, that he had no talent or no in-ring ability. But when he needed to flip the switch, it was like a completely different person, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, no. Hogan, I've said this a million times, in the 80s was great. And this match is super interesting for a bunch of like little stories that you can attach to it. Like the symbolism of Hogan wearing the white here, which is what you associate like the early 80s Hogan with, or the early run as champ with, where he was still changing up the colors. He'd wear blue, he'd wear red, sometimes, of course, yellow, and then white. It's interesting, and this is a Texas death match, which used to be the staple of the territory for a blow-off, especially during, the Backlund years and the Sammartino years. And they had gone away from it. Like I was thinking earlier today, had they done a Texas death match with Hogan as champ? I know the match he had with Kamala at MSG in January, I think that was just a no disqualification match, right? Which basically is what a Texas death match is, but it wasn't billed as a Texas death match.
They didn't issue the warning to everyone evacuates the area.
Yeah, there's another...
That was awesome, actually. That was awesome.
Yeah, there's so many little things about this. So they hadn't done a Texas death match since Backlund was champion. And I want to go back to the top of the show. Gorilla, right at the beginning, says he couldn't recall when the world title was put up in a Texas death match, which is a super odd comment for someone like him to make, because the title had literally been put up dozens of times in the 60s, and like from the 60s to the early 80s in Texas death matches. They were like, the Texas death match was the feud ender for a long time.
It was one of the big ones. What, Dusty and Graham, right?
Yeah, that's a big one. Ken Patera and Bob Backlund is a famous one too, from 1980. They didn't introduce the cage match to MSG until late 75, and then they used it very sparingly, where they would use the Texas death match like at least twice a year. So very odd. I know now the WWF was into full rewriting history mode by 1987, so that was probably the basis behind it. They were kind of treating it like they'd never done the Texas death match before, and for all the new fans, for all intents and purposes, they never had. And the funny thing is, I don't think they do another Texas death match after this, one that I can recall, obviously, or that obviously happened. So this was a throwback to the Vince Sr. years in a way with the Texas death match, and a throwback to Hogan's earlier years with the white trunks and the more violent way of wrestling. And it's also fitting that Harley Race is his opponent, like an old school guy, the 70s kingpin of the NWA, classic heel, and you get like an NWA kind of violent match. I've referred to Hogan like the 84 through 87 Hogan as Earth 2 Hogan. If you're a fan of classic DC Comics, you'd get that comparison, because the Earth 2 Superman was from the 30s and 40s, and the Earth 1, confusingly enough, Superman was from like the 60s and 70s, because it was a way to explain how come the characters never aged in the comics book, is that there was two worlds, and one was the older Superman and the younger Superman. So the Hogan pre-87 is the Earth 2 Hogan, because he had a few differences, right? He wore different colored trunks, he had different theme music, and he bled a lot, and was in these kind of matches. And so this was kind of like the end of that Hogan in a way.
Right.
Because I think he goes exclusively yellow trunks after this. I could be wrong. He may have snuck in the white ones again, but this was pretty much it. And this was a great match. I'd seen it before, probably a couple times before. I've always loved it. Race, he didn't have too much left in the tank at this point, but he could still go. He was meant for these kind of matches. He was a quintessential main event wrestler, feud guy, blood feud guy. So this was perfect for Race. Hogan storms the ring, big brawl from the start. There's no pretense to any kind of wrestling tonight. This is truly hate-filled. And yeah, like the whole thing about Hogan putting up his career, I guess they needed a hook for the rematch. I don't know. It was a weird stipulation, but this whole 2-match series was kind of, atypical for the WWF, that they had Race, that they had a Texas Death Match, that they had the career stipulation, that it was more violent than normal. I don't know. For some reason, they decided to kind of just go with like an old school approach for a couple months here. And it worked. It was great. I
wish they even just had Hulk maybe sell like the Bobby thing. Like, I'm done with you and your guys. Like, if I can't beat him and beat you, I'm out. I feel like he just made it like it was more about Harley attacking him last month, which was a bit soft. Like, I wish maybe they just did hype up that. Like, Bobby, you've got my friends to turn on me. You've attacked me left and right. I'm done. Like, I'll give you a guy one more shot, and if I can't beat him, I'm out. Like something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, kind of rushed that way. But, we can't argue with the output here. They produced really good matches. This was a great match. They worked so well together. And, Scott, I think you asked on the last show whether they'd ever wrestled before the WWF, and they had a few times that I can think of, none of which are on tape that I'm aware of. Famously, in the late 70s when Hogan was Sterling Golden in Georgia, he had an NWA title match with Race where they did a dusty finish, and Hogan was declared the winner at the end of the night.
Yes.
But then, they returned the belt later, and there is a picture of Hogan out there with the NWA title.
With the NWA belt, yes. I actually looked it up after the fact. You're right, Kel. I did find the picture too of him with the NWA belt, which is actually kind of freaky.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I looked it up after the fact, and yeah, they did. I forgot it was Georgia because I'm trying to think. I'm like, I'm going through all the territories. It wasn't in Mid-Atlantic. I was thinking maybe he did a shot like in Kansas City or something, out of the blue. But I totally forgot that he did do a hit in Georgia. So that's actually a good call, Kel. And I did find the picture of him with the. They did a bunch of those. Harley was the master of the house show phantom finish. He had like a shitload in his career.
Yeah, they were doing it. Well, the NWA title, was one of the things that watered it down, as they did that way too much. Another time Hogan and Race wrestled was in 1983 in St. Louis, actually.
Close. Okay, Midwest.
Yeah, a very rare appearance by Hogan in St. Louis. He was still with the AWA, and they actually had to do a 1-fall match instead of a 2 out of 3 falls, which was the norm in St. Louis for a main event, because Hogan wasn't even, at that point, he wouldn't even drop a fall in a match. Like, he was that insistent on not doing any jobs, so they had to compromise and do a 1-fall, like, double count out or time limit draw or something.
But, which is funny, 83 St. Louis, because obviously in 83 Harley and Flair were like red hot, obviously, on their path to Starrcade. So to see Hogan even in the middle of that is pretty funny.
Yeah, I think Harley may have actually been the NWA champion at that point. It was in that few months. Well, yeah, no, he had the title in 83 for a good 5 months or so.
He won it in June.
Yeah,
he won back in June.
Yeah,
and he had it from June till Flair beat him at Starrcade. So.
Yeah, I think it was during his run that Hogan was brought in for one shot there. But yeah, so it was rare, a rare meeting between the two guys. Not much more to say about this. It's great. I love the ending where Hogan, the belt gets involved, and then Hogan pins him while holding the belt high in the air. Just a great moment there. Huge pop. Race, nice to see some color from him, because a Texas Death Match definitely needs some blood to it. Pile drivers on the floor, headbutts on the floor, all kinds of crazy stuff, chair shots. Yeah, this was a great match. I went 4 stars as well. Kind of for me, it's like the end of an era, kind of, for Hogan. But he went. It ended on a super high note. Anyway,
you lost me a Superman 2, whatever the fuck it was.
Johnny Sorrow knows what I'm talking about.
That makes it even worse.
Well, none of us know what we're talking about.
All right, so great match is what we're trying to say. Here it was a really, really fun. It's been a fun two match sprint, and of course we'll see more of these guys in the future. But this was a nice little taste, and like you said, good throwback to some of the Hogan stuff we'd seen since we've been starting these shows.
Okay, I actually found it. Sorry, JR. I actually found it. It was October. I found it on historywww.com, Mr. Cawthon. It was October 8th, 83. Central States in St. Louis. Hulk Hogan defeated NWA World Champion Harley Race via disqualification when Race threw the challenger over the top rope.
There you go.
So
yeah, it would have been an NWA title match. That's crazy.
Wow, look at this. Ron Ritchie, Bob Brown, and Angelo Mosca defeated Roger Kirby, Jerry Brown, and Sheik Abdullah. Wasn't that Hard-Boiled Haggerty? What's his name? Sheik Abdullah?
It was Angry Abdullah, something like that.
Angry Haggerty? Anyway, so there you go, Kel. It was October 8th. So it was like a month and a half before Starrcade.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sorry,
all right. No problem. Al's backstage with the Can-Am Connection, who revealed that the contract for the Islanders is finally signed and the match will happen in MSG on July 25th. Or will it? The Can-Ams want the Islanders badly after what happened on TV when they jumped them from behind and associated with Bobby. Zenk says they're the biggest disgrace to the islands that they can think of. They vow will win and will get their revenge. I love that line too. Like, we've been thinking hard about all the possible disgraces to the islands, and you're the biggest one. That's basically what he's saying. And I guess you have to compare the island size, right, to really get across what they're trying to say. And that brings us to our next match, and it's one we talked about earlier. That is Outback Jack against Jose Estrada. Real tough cooldown spot for these guys, throwing him out there after Hogan and Reese. This is just a fucking death zone. Estrada's already in the ring with his goofy ass, as the goofy-ass Outback Jack from Humpty Doo ambles out to his nonsense music. Jack gets a backdrop to start, but Estrada lands a shot to the gut and slugs away. Jack punches back, but Estrada catches him with a back elbow and more strikes. Jack goes to the eyes, but Estrada takes him down a few times by the leg. Jack keeps kicking free and sends Estrada begging off. Estrada lands another punch and works over Jack as we get some talk about Australia. Jack comes back again with punches and hoists Estrada up by his neck and slams him down twice. Estrada lands a headbutt to the gut and heads up top for an elbow for 2. Jack turns things around with a slam and a backdrop and finishes him with the boomerang. This was fucking terrible. Filled with slow, pedantic strikes that had no flow, no rhythm. Jack looked better here, actually, I thought, than last time, but it was still real fucking garbage. I went with a big old fucking dud on this one. How about you, Kelly?
Yeah, easy dud. For me, even though it was nice to see Estrada back, speaking of Vince Sr., he was a fixture of the WWF during Vince Sr.'s years, and he'd actually been gone for 4 years. I had to check this because I didn't think he'd been on in any of the MSG shows we've been reviewing. So he's returning after 4 years, and he's put with Outhouse Jack.
Wow, we really haven't seen him at all? I feel like we've seen him at some point.
No, I checked. April 83 was his last MSG match. I mean, you're maybe confusing him with Jose Luis Rivera, which is a common mistake. It was definitely a common mistake for Parv on Titans of Wrestling.
Yes,
that's for sure. Tepid response to Jack. He's not over. The fans know he's a joke. Boring chants. Jack sold a ton, like way too much for somebody that's supposed to be good. And then, we get a quick finish with the boomerang clothesline. Estrada, of course, kicks out at 3 because he has no respect for Jack. And, it all adds up to a big dud.
I gave this a dud, too. Incidentally, Cal, Hogan and Harley did wrestle in Kansas City 5 days later.
Oh, interesting.
On that loop, and they wrestled to a no contest. So
of course,
it looks like he was filling in or something because he did like 6 dates over like a month and a half span in that Kansas City St. Louis area.
Yeah, I think
he was signed for something quick or temporary.
Yeah, well, even then Hogan was a pretty big draw. I think he was brought in to pop the gates because St. Louis was struggling at that point, and Kansas City was always fucking struggling. So he was definitely brought in to help draw some money.
Yeah, he came in July, and he wrestled in the Missouri State title tournament. He beat the fuck is this guy? Kuchitsa Kochenko? What the fuck that is. And then he fought Jerry Blackwell to a no contest. Ric Flair won the tournament because he's Rick. And then he fought in August. He was in a 6-man with Dick the Bruiser and Ron Ritchie. Fought Jerry Blackwell again, and then the 2 Harley matches, and then he was in another 6-man. So yeah, he looks like he did a quick St. Louis, Kansas City shot from like July to October.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's cool.
So anyway, yeah, this match is the shits. I gave it a dud, but it was a good spot after the awesome Hogan match and before our 6-man main event. Good spot for it. I mean, I don't know what the Outback Jack thing was. I mean, I guess he was just a dopey novelty, but I mean, he's just not good. He has no idea what he's doing. He's got you could tell he's got zero wrestling ability at all, or any training for that matter. Jesus, I haven't seen Jose Estrada in ages. Yeah. He was a big early '80s job guy for Vince on some of those early house shows, even like late '70s. So I don't know if he was. Boy, I tell you, we were talking about the roster. If they had to bring him back for even just a job spot. Right. Fucking A. Did these guys have to go to Pine Bluff? I mean, what the fuck? It's like ludicrous. But anyway, not much more to say here. This match is fucking trash. Why don't we just let's get to the main event, our last match.
And our last match is featuring our tag team champions as the British Bulldogs are teaming up with Billy Jack Haynes, doing some double duty here tonight, taking on the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis. And Billy Jack is replacing Coco Beware here tonight. Of course, Coco had his issues with Danny Davis. We saw that last month. Did they even announce that here? I know Greeny has it in the notes, right? Billy Jack just comes out, right?
No. Yeah, they didn't even mention that he wrestled earlier in the evening.
Right. It's like it never happened.
Weird.
This is there.
Yeah.
Weird. All right, big 6-man match to wrap up the night. Haynes doing double duty after the match earlier. The heat for the Harts continues to buzz as they've dominated the tag division here. Davis has been a major douche the whole time, of course. The Fink is announcing the Harts, the Bulldogs, and Billy Jack surprise attacked them out of nowhere and clean house, which is really cool. That was fun and very unexpected, something we haven't seen really at all. Gorilla now wonder where Jimmy Hart is as his Chargers regroup outside. Davey and Brett start us off with Davey winning the skirmish as Brett goes outside to take a breath. Back inside, Davey works the arm and tags in Billy Jack, who claps the ears of Brett hard. Billy Jack tags Dynamite, who spikes Brett down and stomps him and grabs the arm. Davey comes in and tries a crucifix, but Brett blocks and falls on him. Anvil tags in, but Davey pops up and smacks him and tags in Billy Jack, who goes to work on the arm. Dynamite tags in, but Anvil pops him in the jaw and slugs away. And then Brett comes in and whacks him from the apron. With Dynamite down, Davis tags in and kicks away arrogantly. Dynamite punches him in the gut, and Davis quickly scampers and tags in Anvil to booze. Anvil and Brett quick tag and hammer away and really put a beating on Dynamite. Davis comes in and lands a few shots before quickly tagging back to Brett, who drops a leg. The Hart slingshot Davis in, but Dynamite gets his knees up, and Davis lands on them hard. Dynamite tags in Billy Jack, who cleans house and press slams Davis hard to the mat. Billy Jack hooks to Phil Nelson, but Brett makes a save and breaks the hold. Davis kicks Billy Jack in the head and tags Brett, who hits a nice backbreaker. Odd, I thought, like you guys mentioned, that Gorilla and Al haven't mentioned at all that Billy Jack's in his second match. Anvil comes in and pounds away, and all three Harts take turns hammering on the Billy Jack at length. The champs are really punishing Haynes, who's turned into really put in a hell of an effort here tonight. Billy Jack finally makes a tag. The referee didn't see it. As he forces the Bulldogs to the apron, Billy Jack dodges the Harts, who clothesline Davis by accident. Billy leaps and makes the hot tag to Davey, who cleans house and works over Brett, nabbing some near falls. Things break down as the Bulldogs double-team Brett, leading to Davey slamming Dynamite on top of the Hitman for the win. Really fun 6-man. It dragged a bit during the second heat segment. I don't know if we needed both. The Harts did everything right, though, while in control. Just a tad much at this point. Nice night for Billy Jack. Really worked hard here on this evening, despite the first time out not being too great. I thought this was a little bit better. Good win for the Bulldogs, too. Gets them back on track. But I thought this feud has really run its course. The Harts need some new challengers. Davis continues to be a heat magnet. Got rocked at the end, as always. Fine match to close out a surprisingly fun little show. I went 2.5 on this one, Scott. What did you think of the match, and what do you think of the Bulldogs kind of being cooked as contenders?
I gave this 2.5. Your match time 18:08, and that was my first point. They are most definitely cooked. They're done. They've been beaten down. And as we've said, we've been talking about it on this show and the last show. They are, this whole tag division's being rejuvenated, and they clearly are being lapped. Stallions, the Islanders even as heels, but just there's a bunch of other teams that are just so much fresher right now. And they lost the belts, almost 6 months before. and they have nothing left. Dynamite is clearly breaking down more and more. It does feel like Davey Boy's doing most of the yeoman's work. So I just don't think they have anything left in the tank. Having said that, this match is really good. I don't know who the fuck dresses Danny Davis. He looks like he's got some weird like fucking underoos on or something. I don't know, JR. He looks like Reverse Bigelow. I have no idea, but he looks fucking ridiculous. I don't know what the hell he just layers himself with more tights. It's just almost so bizarre. I don't know. Maybe that's the gag that he's a fucking boob. I don't know, but I mean, having said that, he's still a pretty good heat magnet, and he's kind of helping. I gotta say, and we talked about this a little bit on the Science Main Event too, and even this last house show, JR. Curious again, your thoughts, Kel. But I mean, Danny Davis is actually a moderately decent heat magnet for these guys.
He's been a great heat magnet. I don't think he's decent. I think he's been fucking great. I think he's turned them around completely.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, the Harts are great heels. Brett and Anvil are good heels, but I tell you, Danny Davis has added so much more for them, and it's almost better for them to be in these 6-man matches than almost be in tag team title matches. Obviously, Danny Davis can be at ringside and cause havoc, but being in the match actually adds even more to his heat aura. And I think it'll be a big deal for them as they're going down the line, down the year facing other contenders. But I think the Bulldogs are definitely done. Dynamite's obviously breaking down. He just can't do it right now anymore. I don't know if your pal Billy Jerk there helps this match at all for you, Kel, but I don't know if he helps. If Coco would have been an upgrade or a downgrade, but. I thought the match was good overall, but what are your thoughts on it, and what do you think about the Bulldogs at this point?
Just before that, real quick with the Harts.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just want to say, too, I thought they would have carved out like a role as like good, solid heel hands before they got with Jimmy and then with Davis. You know what I mean? Like, they were solid in the ring, workmen. Like, I could have seen them just kind of settling into, kind of like what the Rougeaus would be and teams like that. Like the Dream Team post-title run. Just the team that other teams work with on their way up to the top. I thought Davis and Jimmy put them over to be a full-on main event act that they become. I don't know if they get as big as they do without Danny Davis. I want your thoughts on that too, Kelly.
Yeah, it all like the timing just was right. Dynamite got hurt because they weren't planned to get the belts, so that was the first thing that had to happen in their favor. And then the Davis thing was they built that up so well. They started that angle with him as the corrupt ref or the dishonest ref right from the very start of the Superstars tapings when they changed everything up. That was on the first episode. They started that angle, and it went for months. He screwed a bunch of guys over, screwed the Bulldogs over. They retroactively said he screwed over Tito to lose to Savage for the Intercontinental title. He was involved in the cage match on Saturday Night's Main Event with Hogan and Orndorff. So the fans just hated him. It was built up so well.
Yeah.
And then they put him in the ring, and it was great. He played the role. He was limited. He wasn't a great wrestler, but in this role, he wasn't supposed to be a great wrestler. Right. He was a referee who suddenly was now a wrestler with little training or anything. So he wasn't supposed to be good. He was supposed to be a chicken shit. He's great here, tagging in, quickly punching a couple times, and then tagging out. The fans just hate him. I'm not sure how much more they could have got out of him, really. And that's kind of what happens. It kind of just peters off here. But at this point, it was great. Yeah, and adding the Harts to the mix, the whole thing just all kind of organically came together, it seems. And yeah, Hart was a great manager, perfect for them. Because without Hart, I don't think Brett and Jim would have really done too much. They were great, like you said, workman tag team. They were great in '86 as being sort of the heel team that made all the babyface tag teams look great, and that was their role. And circumstances put them into this higher spot, and it turned out great for them. As far as the Bulldogs, Dynamite's a shell of his former self. You could really see in this match that he couldn't do too much. He was barely involved. Even on the pin, like when he's dropped onto Hitman, he winces. I don't know if that was selling, because it seemed like he really was hurt just having to do that move. So yeah, he just, you could tell he couldn't really, his mobility was very limited, and it's sad because they were, I think they still had a lot left in them as a team when he got hurt. They were very popular, and this run now, they had to kind of tie up loose ends because they got screwed out of the titles, and it was natural to bring them back because the fans wanted to see the Bulldogs get their revenge.
Right.
They did do like a series of cage matches on the house shows that, unfortunately, none of them ever were put on tape. Apparently, they were like the last bloodbaths of the era. They were so bloody that Vince finally put his foot down. I mean, I think Vince was already moving away from blood, but those ones really made Vince say, okay, no more blood, no more blading, specifically no more blading. And you wouldn't see that in the WWF until the Attitude Era. And then Billy Jack's in here. Weird. Coco, I looked at the records, and it's weird. It didn't seem like he was hurt or anything, like he was making all the other dates. So I'm wondering if he just missed a flight or if there's some transportation problem.
Right.
Because he was already involved in this whole angle, so he should have been here. And obviously Billy Jack was a last-second sub because he wrestled earlier in the evening, even though they completely ignored that. It was like an obvious storyline to tell.
Right, why not say, look, this guy's fucking exhausted. Look at what a great effort he's putting in out there after a 20-minute war with Hercules, back out here now.
Yeah, it's so strange that like I could see Vince nowadays that being like a idiosyncratic thing that he would no-sell just because that's what Vince does. But here I don't think that had anything to do with it, but who knows? It was just weird. So great heat for this match, mostly because of Davis and the fans wanting to see Davis get his comeuppance. And it was good work overall. I liked it a shade more than you guys. I gave it 3 stars because the crowd was really into it. Great heat, and you also got a babyface win. You got a happy ending for the Bulldogs. That this is pretty much it for them because they weren't going to get the belts back, and
but they're not done yet. They get they're still in the title mix here.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're not totally done, but this was kind of it was like Tito winning the cage match with Bruno against Savage and Adonis.
We see it again next month, though.
Okay. Anyway, a good finish to the show, and with the talent involved, well, the Bulldogs and the Harts anyway, I was expecting something pretty good.
I thought Billy did okay. I thought he did all right in this. He was better here than he was in the first going.
Yeah, he's made for these tag settings. Like he's as a singles wrestler, he's just doesn't have enough charisma to make the fans care. But I think in tag setting, he's fine.
All right, so that brings an end to of course, night. So why don't we do some awards here? I'm going to pull up the old tracker. And we'll start with our match of the night. I think is a pretty obvious choice yet again, and that's Hogan versus Race, second month in a row.
No doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cousin Jr., got a couple of little options in the mix, but I went with Jack and Estrada. I thought that was fucking brutal.
Yeah, that was brutal. I agree.
Yep. Yeah. Obvious choice.
That's easy.
The Hogan Award for our MVP of the night. This guy got 2 of the 3 votes last month, and that, I think, is, again, an easy choice on this evening. That's Hulk Hogan.
Easily.
Yep.
Easily.
That's who I went with. Yeah.
All right, Uncle Elmer for the worst worker of the night. I went with our buddy Outback Jack yet again. I thought he was fucking terrible here. Just was not very good at all.
He's hideous. He's absolutely hideous.
Outhouse, baby.
Aiming for a clean sweep, maybe. Best moments. I went with Race's pile driver on the floor.
Yep. Anything involving that match is fine with me.
Yeah, I was struggling to pick out a moment from that one out of all of them. I went with Hogan's pin with holding the belt up as he pinned him. I loved that spot.
All right, so we have we'll just kind of put them both. Race pile drives Hogan, and Hogan pins him, holding the belt. How about that? Everyone good with that?
And I think a piece of the belt broke, actually.
Yeah.
That's what they were saying. Yeah.
Right, so now let's get to our CD award for the most juiced up guy of the night. We had a couple options here, but I'm going with Hogan on this one. I thought he was the biggest of everyone. Hercules is always in the mix, of course, whenever he's out there. But I thought Hulk was the biggest dude here tonight.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
So pretty much a clean sweep, guys. Exciting stuff. All right, our final grade here. I thought the show started a little shaky. I was feeling the blues after last week's show with the May 87. But I thought it picked up. I thought we ended up having a 3.5 star match. I'm sorry, 3.5 star match. And then I went 3 stars with the Roma Powers match, 2.5 for the main. Nothing really awful besides Jack, and that was short. So, I understand they were in a bit of a crunch. They had a lot going on here. They were jamming stuff in and filling time, and I thought they did pretty well, all things considered. So I actually went 5.5 on the show. I enjoyed it enough to be a little bit above kind of a middle of the road show. Kelly, what do you think?
Yeah, that's the grade I went with too. I almost thought about 6. Because for me, it was a 4-star match with Hogan and Race, and 2 3-star matches actually for me. So that's got to be like one of the higher averages of star ratings for a show. But there was the time limit draw with Billy Jerk and Herc that sucked. Outhouse sucked. Orndorff and JYD was a weird vintage mess of a match. But one of the better MSG shows overall, top to bottom, I think.
Would you go with?
Because we didn't.
Did you say 6?
Yeah,
okay.
I went 5.5. Maybe I should. Okay, I'll go 6. I talked myself into it.
No, we got to keep the clean sweep. Well, we'll see what's
Because I was going to say also we didn't have all the usually we have 3 or 4 just dreadful matches that are half-star duds. We didn't really have that tonight. There was only 7 matches total. This was a much more manageable MSG show to watch.
And what do you think, Scott?
I was almost going to give it a 6, Kel, and then I realized that I only did 1 3 and a 4-star. You did 2 3s and a 4-star, so I can't see me giving it a 6. So I'm going to go with JR and go 5.5.
Kelly, come on, take it down. 5.5, clean sweep.
No, I'll do this. I'll do this.
No, it's fair. It makes sense. I mean, he 2 3s and a 4, and I did 1 3 and a 4, and I almost gave it a 6. But this show was good, but there was some. I'm not. You know what's funny? I'm not gonna take the Outback Jack match into consideration because I knew walking in that match was a pile of shit. So I'm gonna just kind of give it a wash. The Herc Billy Jack was just so long and so dull. I really wanted to make that better, and it just wasn't. So, anytime I see Outback Jack, I just pretty much forget that it even exists because the match is going to be fucking shit. So, I'm not even going to punish the show for that match because you knew it was going to be bad anyway. The Billy Jack Herc match, I was expecting more, and it was crap. So, I'm going to give it 5.5.
All right, so that'll do it. Another one in the books here tonight. Hope everyone enjoyed. I did, as always. We'll be back next week, probably Tuesday again, with the holiday being Monday. Guy making his debut here in the Vintage Vault reboot. Well, I guess we'll save it for a little surprise, but we'll be talking July 87 with that gentleman. And then on from there, we got a couple more house shows into the new year. So nothing really off schedule. We're planning to be here every week for a bit, going through the 87 timeline. Of course, if you haven't checked out our Christmas Spectacular dropped this past Friday, please do. A lot of work and effort goes into that thing. It's a lot of fun, as always. So be sure to check that out if you haven't. Scott, what do you got? Anything coming up main event-wise?
Main event this week, we will have, we'll talk a little about what's going on, obviously, with the flamethrower. Obviously, big upset or big win for Kevin Owens down on SmackDown Live. We'll talk about the Women's Rumble. And we will start the second new segment of our show. We are going to start this week recapping every TNA pay-per-view, and that goes even back to the weekly. So we're going to go all the way back to June of 2002 this week. And myself, Nate, I think Aaron George is going to join us, Steve Willie, and we'll talk about that very first ever TNA pay-per-view from June of 2002. So it'll be a lot of fun. So check it out this week.
All right, very good. Also, of course, if you haven't yet submitted your ballot for the Greatest WWE Wrestler Ever project, please do. Ballots close on Sunday nights, New Year's Eve at 12 or 11:59, right before midnight. We're trending pretty well. We got a lot of ballots in. We'd like to get a few more. So if you're finishing cramming and get those in before the deadline, so they'll count. And then, of course, the results will start to flow out. We'll be doing some podcasts. I know Aaron and I have plans to reveal our list in a podcast series. We'll also do one breaking down the list. So a lots going on. Scott, I'm sure you'll be in on that too, and Kelly, maybe you as well. Yeah, you can do one.
Yep.
So make sure you get on that if you haven't yet. Lots of discussion going on. Kelly, you got anything going on podcast-wise you want to talk about?
Well, the latest Worldcast with Pete and Johnny Suro just dropped on Christmas morning, episode 0, where we went back to Christmas Day 1981 and looked at the Christmas Star Wars card. That was definitely worse than this MSG show that we just talked about.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've compared World Class in 82 to a last place baseball team. And yeah, the 81 squad was even worse than the 82 squad. Not much going for it, but we had a great time as always, and please check it out.
All right, so with that said, we will go ahead and wrap up. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well, and Tumblr, I think. And that said, we'll be back next week. So thanks for everyone for listening. As always, for Kelly, for Scott, I'm Justin. We're out. Talk to you in a week's time. Hopefully with